Chapter 4397. Hearing Sun Hongbiao's words, the woman did not have any reaction, but the mysterious man's eyes suddenly narrowed for some reason. Also, if I remember correctly, after the dungeon was blown up, that person seemed to be running with that Lu guy. There must be something fishy going on between the two of them, hee. Sun Hongbiao was getting more and more excited as he spoke. Wait a minute. What's the name of the Lu you mentioned? The mysterious man suddenly asked. Let me think. Sun Hongbiao frowned and thought for a long time, then finally slapped his head and said, I think he's called Lu Bianren. Lu Bianren. The mysterious man's eyes suddenly flashed, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a playful smile. Do you know this person? The woman could not help but ask. The mysterious man nodded without batting an eyelid. He glanced at Wang Deyuan and the others, but did not say much. Hearing this, he had already guessed the truth, but there were too many people, so he naturally would not say it in front of these people. The few of you can leave for now. The woman understood tacitly, and immediately ordered everyone to leave. Sun Hongbiao did not say anything, but Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were both overjoyed. They thought that they had made such a big mess this time. Even if they did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. But looking at it, this Miss Luan did not seem to have any special intention to pursue the matter. The two of them immediately thanked her profusely, and hurriedly dragged Sun Hongbiao out. In the room, only Miss Luan and the mysterious man were left. This Lu Bianren, if I'm not mistaken, is a disciple of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island. When he was the third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, I heard that he had a very close relationship with Lin Yi, the mysterious man said slowly. Oh, Lu Bianren and Lin Yi have a close relationship, so that means that Wu Fu is likely Lin Yi? Miss Luan nodded. In fact, before this, she had already speculated in this regard. After all, she had been paying attention to Lin Yi for a long time. Yes, at least 90% likely. According to what this person said, the move that destroyed the dungeon was very similar to the alchemic firebomb. Among the people this subordinate has seen, there are only two people who are proficient in this extremely rare technique. One is Kong Ming Ming, who is now a member of our center, and he is now in the North Island, so we can rule him out. The other one is Lin Yi. The mysterious man said with certainty. He has a close relationship with Lu Bianren and also knows how to use the pill firebomb. Judging from this Wu Fu must be Lin Yi. Miss Luan concluded. There's one more thing that can be proved. Although this person looks like a martial artist, the feeling he gives off doesn't match his temperament. This means that this person is likely to be wearing a disguise, which is Lin Yi in disguise. The mysterious man nodded. Then he said, Moreover, I went to the Lufeng forest to look for the infant ginseng. In fact, I had already found the traces of the infant ginseng, but it was one step ahead of me. At that time, there were traces of a pill firebomb left at the scene. If I'm not wrong, it should be Lin Yi who did it. These things might be suspicious if they were taken apart and looked at individually, but when they were all gathered together, all the arrows pointed to the same person. Then there was no need to doubt anymore. This person must be Lin Yi. This guy is a little interesting. I really don't know whether he did it on purpose or not. He actually came to ruin our business again and again. Miss Luan couldn't help laughing. From her expression at the moment, others couldn't tell whether she was happy or angry. Miss Luan, why don't I go there myself? The mysterious man suggested. It didn't matter if it was intentional or not. Letting Lin Yi do whatever he wanted wasn't a good thing for them. They didn't know what kind of trouble he'd cause in the future if they didn't do something about it. No. Lin Yi must be kept alive. He will be of great use in the future. This is something Dr. Li specifically told me. I can't violate it. Anyway, it's not a big deal. If he wants to make a mess, then so be it. Let him be. Miss Luan shook her head slightly. But Lin Yi, he has done amazing things again and again. Don't look at his current strength. I have a hunch that it won't be long before he becomes a big problem for us. At that time, it won't be so easy to deal with him. The mysterious man was a little worried. He seemed to know Lin Yi very well. With his level of strength, under normal circumstances, he wouldn't pay attention to a gold core stage master like Lin Yi. He would only treat him as a lowly ant that could be crushed to death. Even if this ant made a little trouble, it would not be able to change the overall situation. However, for some reason, this mysterious man's attention to Lin Yi had far exceeded the level of treating ordinary ants. He said that it was as if he was facing a great enemy. Why? With your talent and strength, why would you be afraid of such a junior? This is really strange. Miss Luan couldn't help but laugh. Now on the Heaven Stage Island, it was true that she was in charge of the overall situation, but this mysterious man was one of the chief confidants. His position in the organization was actually very high. He could reach his current level completely by relying on his super talent and strength. In the face of him, no tycoon dared to underestimate him. He was an extraordinary person. It was inevitable that the mysterious man was also a person with high standards. Not to mention ordinary people, even a profound ascending stage master would be afraid of him. However now, he only treated a gold core stage master like Lin Yi differently. He even expressed his fear in his heart. This kind of thing, even Miss Luan had heard of it. I'm not afraid. It's just that my intuition tells me that Lin Yi can't be underestimated. In order to avoid future trouble, it's best to nip the hidden danger in the bud. The mysterious man said sternly. As Miss Luan said, with his talent and strength, he never needed to be afraid of anyone. Any master, including those legendary masters, could only be surpassed by him, and no one had ever been able to surpass him. However, conceit was conceit. At the same time, the mysterious man had absolute rationality. He would never make mistakes because of conceit, and he would never underestimate the enemy because of conceit. Otherwise, if he was really the kind of person who looked down on others with a little bit of strength, it would be impossible for him to achieve his current status and level in an organization full of masters. That's right, but this Lin Yi can't die at the moment. Once he dies, it will be meaningless. This is not only an order from Dr. Li, but also a consideration of the situation. Seeing the severity of the mysterious man's words, Miss Luan explained seriously. If something happens to Lin Yi, especially if it's in our hands, it's very likely that those people will be driven to desperation and kill themselves. That'll be big trouble. Chapter 4398. Those people. The mysterious man's eyes flashed when he heard this. Of course, he knew who Miss Luan was referring to. At the same time, he also knew how terrifying those people's strength was. Yes, the situation between us and those people is still maintaining a delicate balance. We are confronting each other and don't dare to act rashly. It's not that we can't, but we don't want to. Miss Luan analyzed. Because the mysterious man had been performing tasks on Heaven Stage Island and had never left, she knew more about these things than the mysterious man. The mysterious man couldn't help but be silent. Although he was afraid of Lin Yi, who was rising rapidly, this was only a trivial matter when considered at the level of the entire organization. The situation of the confrontation between the two sides was the most important thing to consider. The current situation is that no matter which side wants to devour the other, the final result will be mutual destruction. So no matter how tense it seems, both sides have actually maintained a tacit understanding. After all, no one is stupid. If there isn't enough fuse, no one will want to inexplicably perish together with the other. Miss Luan deliberately paused and then warned sternly. However, if you make a move against Lin Yi, I am afraid that it will ignite the fuse, and then it will really lead to this unprecedented battle. So, not only can we not deal with Lin Yi now, but we also have to protect him at the critical moment? The mysterious man couldn't help but have a headache. He rubbed his temples with one hand and said, "Previously, I was asked to protect him because of this? Yes, this matter is kept between you and me. It is a highly confidential matter. It must not be known by a third person except you and me. You know Professor Li's means." Miss Luan reminded him coldly. As for how to treat this Lin Yi in the future and what to do with him, I haven't received any news from Professor Li yet. Let's wait and see. Yes. The mysterious man still had doubts in his heart. He had a vague feeling that something would happen to this hidden danger, but since the higher-ups had already given such an order, he couldn't justify the order because of such an uncertain doubt. Although he could summon the wind and summon the rain on Heaven Stage Island, one word from Professor Li could make him die a miserable death. He had already attached great importance to Lin Yi, but even so, he had never thought that Lin Yi's identity would be so crucial and sensitive. Pulling one hair would affect the whole body. Lin Yi was actually standing between two major forces. An important figure at the heart of the storm. In any case, with Lin Yi's current strength, he alone is far from being able to pose a threat to us. Let's not bother about him for the time being. Our top priority now is to focus on our development plan. This is the foundation that can truly influence the situation in the future. You have to be clear about your priorities. You must not be distracted by a mere Lin Yi. Miss Luan said resolutely. I understand. The mysterious man nodded. In the end, Lin Yi was just a possible hidden danger. There were many geniuses these days, and more than 90% of them were dazzling in the early stage. However, once they entered a higher level, they would lack momentum and eventually fade into the crowd. Lin Yi might not be able to escape this fate. What's more, even if Lin Yi could really grow up, the threat that he could create alone was very limited after all. On the contrary, if this extremely critical human experiment could be done successfully, the organization would be invincible from then on. They could break the balance in one fell swoop. At that time, Lin Yi would not have any time and opportunity to grow at all. The war would end early, and things would be settled. Bring Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang in. Although there was a mess this time, the human experiment still has to continue. Miss Luan ordered. The mysterious man nodded and immediately called Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang, who were guarding outside, in. Miss Luan. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang greeted her respectfully. The two of them were still trembling with fear, as though they were walking on thin ice. Although Ma Tianlang had pulled Sun Hongbiao out in a moment of desperation, and it seemed to have dispelled the anger of the superior, being in the king's company was like being with a tiger. Who knew what Miss Luan was thinking? If she was really determined to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, the two of them would not be able to escape death. You two, I don't need to say more about how big the mess this time is, right? Miss Luan said expressionlessly. Because we did not get the infant ginseng, our experiment was already very difficult. Now that we are at a critical stage, so many test samples suddenly ran away, and even the progress of the entire experiment will be greatly delayed. Miss Luan, we know our mistake. We will go and catch them now. We guarantee that the experiment will not be delayed. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang quickly knelt down, patted their chests and promised. If they did not do something quickly to atone for their mistake, if Miss Luan wanted to settle the score later, the two of them would really have a bad ending. This time, they were really desperate. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang had just discussed privately outside, and they were ready to personally go outside to catch the people. With the strength of the two Xianxia stage masters, catching a few gold core stage masters was a piece of cake. As long as there was a suitable target, it was not difficult to catch dozens of them. This approach, in order to prevent suspicion, they would not do it before. Generally, they had to find a reason that was not too suspicious, like those people who were locked in the dungeon before. But now, there was no other way. The human experiment was short of samples. If it was delayed for too long, it was difficult to guarantee that Miss Luan would not be angry. They had to choose the lesser of two evils, so they could only take some risks. Wait, are you two mentally retarded or retarded? Miss Luan frowned. Ah! Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were suddenly stunned, and looked at each other. Before this, we have already caught hundreds of gold core stage masters in the magic cold sea. Although the sea in the South Continent is notoriously chaotic, and no one will intervene even if a few of them are killed in public, but after a long time, have you not thought that it will arouse the suspicion of other big forces? Going out to catch a large number of people at this time, don't you think it is not big enough? Miss Luan looked at the two of them, completely looking at them as if they were looking at idiots. This. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang's mouth twitched. The two of them were only thinking about how to atone for their mistake. As long as they could get past Miss Luan, who the fuck cares whether those forces will be suspicious or not? In their opinion, these so-called big forces could only show off their power in the local area. In front of the experts, they were nothing. Chapter 4399. The North Island was the first to carry out human experiments. So far, it is also the place with the most missing gold core stage cultivators. Now it has attracted the attention of the top management of the 3 pavilions in the North Island. The incident has been secretly reported to the Law Enforcement Hall for investigation, so the North Island can only stop temporarily. I don't know how long the South Continent can last. The mysterious man stood beside Miss Luan and said lightly, "This experiment is our top priority in the Heaven Stage Island, and it is also the key trump card for us to take the initiative in the future. So it must be carried out in strict secrecy and must not be discovered by the outside world. It is not difficult to destroy those local forces on the Heaven Stage Island, But once the news is leaked, everything we have done before will be in vain. Miss Luan nodded. We are ignorant and almost ruined the organization's plan. Please forgive us, Miss Luan. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang quickly apologized. Humph, you are not only ignorant, you are simply stupid. You can't even watch a group of gold core stage cultivators. You are simply trash. Miss Luan said coldly. The fact that these people have run away and that the test samples are broken is secondary. What we should be worried about now is whether the news of our human experiments will spread through these people's mouths, causing panic and attention from other forces. These people who ran away are afraid that the news will leak out and they will be caught again. They should not dare to spread it around in a short time, but after a long time, it is hard to say. The mysterious man also frowned. Don't worry, Miss Luan. I will do my best to hunt them down. When these people were caught, their identities were recorded. With our organization's intelligence network and power, it should not be too difficult to hunt them down. Wang Deyuan hurriedly guaranteed. Well, I will leave this matter to you. Never let the news leak out. If you can't catch them alive, then kill these people. Remember, this is your last chance to save yourself. If you can't do it well, don't come back to see me. Miss Luan said coldly. Also, forget about Wu Fu and Lu Bianren. You don't need to catch them. Yes, we will definitely make up for our mistakes. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were so scared that they were drenched in cold sweat and nodded repeatedly. Although he didn't understand why Wu Fu and Lu Bianren didn't need to capture them, he didn't dare to ask. Although we can't arouse suspicion, we still have to continue the experiment. It just so happens that the dungeon has been destroyed this time. Let's move to another sea area. Anyway, we've captured a lot of people here, and it's not safe to continue. Wang Deyuan, you're the person in charge of the southern continent. I'll leave this matter to you as well. If there's even the slightest mistake, I won't spare you. Young Miss Luan ordered. Yes. Wang Deyuan replied in a low voice. His life was at stake. He had already made up his mind. Even if he had to put aside the matter of the molten branch, he had to do these two things well first. Otherwise, he would not even be able to keep his head. What was the point of being greedy? Secular world, Chu family villa. Ever since He Luan Duan and the Iron Cloak sex people had come menacingly but were easily dealt with by Lin Dongfang, the villa had returned to its former tranquility. In fact, it was even more tranquil than before. This was because all kinds of rumors were spreading like wildfire. It was said that this place was treacherous, and there would be strange phenomena appearing from time to time. Many people in the surrounding area had even moved away. It was better to believe such mysterious things than not. In any case, those who could afford a villa were people who didn't lack money. Who would be willing to give up a good life and stay in this place in fear? For the group of people left by Lin Yi, it wasn't a bad thing that the surrounding people had moved away. No matter what kind of temperament a cultivator originally had, they would often be more accustomed to peace and quiet. Moreover, the unconscious women were left in the villa. They needed a quieter environment. Originally, after settling the previous incident, Lin Dongfang suggested that everyone move to the West Star Mountain village. However, after discussing for a while, they finally declined. With the protection of the great Lin Dongfang, compared to the Chu family villa, moving to the West Star Mountain village was more worry-free. However, everyone had their own lives after all. They hadn't reached the point where they were completely free. It was obviously unrealistic to let them be so isolated from the world. Moreover, after experiencing this incident, even a fierce person like He Luan Duan was scared out of his wits. How could other people be afraid of him? After all, this was only the secular world. Everyone's strength was already standing at the peak of existence. Each one of them was famous. Only others were afraid of them. No one dared to take the initiative to provoke them. Even if someone could really deal with so many heaven-stage great perfection experts, if the great Lin Dongfang behind them was drawn out, who could stop him? The lackeys didn't go themselves, and only sent the unconscious girls over. Letting Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing take care of so many people at once wasn't very justifiable. The old couple still wanted to have a world of their own, and so they just carried on as usual. The girls were still settled in the villa, and the lackeys were still in groups of 2, taking turns to guard the place. Today, it was Chen Tian and Ling Shan's turn to guard the place. Ling Shan was in the room taking care of the girls, while Chen Tian, General Wei Wu, and the purple lightning beast were working downstairs. The man and the two beasts were extremely nervous, as if they were facing a great enemy. They were playing landlord. When people were bored, they would always do something stupid. Even practitioners were no exception. Fighting the landlord with two spiritual beasts was something that Xianxia had never done before, and it wouldn't be repeated in the future. What was even rarer was that his face was plastered with white paper. Playing landlord with two spiritual beasts. He was a human, and he was the one who lost the most. Xianxia's eyebrows furrowed. He was about to lose again. Just as the atmosphere was getting tense, the doorbell rang. "Who is it?" Xianxia paused. The two beasts didn't seem to be alerted at all, and he knew that it was just a normal person, no threat. "Express delivery." It was the voice of a guy outside. Express delivery? Xianxia was even more surprised. He never bought anything online, and even if someone did, they wouldn't send it here. What express delivery? Plus, the things needed in the villa were all bought by them in shifts from the nearby supermarket. Faubert would often send all sorts of things over, so no one would buy express delivery here. At that thought, Xianxia felt that something was wrong. He gave the two beasts a look and got up to open the door. The two beasts, on the other hand, silently went out from the back door, flanking from both sides. If anything went wrong, one man and two beasts would attack at the same time. Chapter 4400. Carefully opening the door, Xianxia looked at the person. He really did look like a normal person, dressed like a delivery boy. If he had to point out a difference, it would be that he was more experienced. "Where's the delivery?" Xianxia frowned. "This is the address, Ocean View Bay Villa Area 8th Villa, Lingshan or Wu Qiantian. May I ask which one are you?" The delivery boy replied faintly. Qiantian was even more suspicious now. "Who the hell are you?" If it was someone else's name written on it, it might really be possible that they bought something and filled in the address to save trouble. But since it was written with his own name, it didn't make sense at all. He didn't buy anything. After last time's experience, Qiantian didn't think that anyone would be so incorrigible as to come looking for trouble. But his first reaction was still to be cautious. This guy was a spy sent by some small fry to spy on him. "Ah!" The deliveryman was startled and looked at him as if he was a lunatic. He muttered, "I'm just a deliveryman. Who else could I be? Let me see the package." Qiantian observed the man's expression carefully. After making sure that there was nothing wrong, he took the package. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the heaven realm. In the secular world, he was an existence akin to an atomic bomb. Even if the other side had bad intentions, he didn't need to worry, he just needed to instinctively be vigilant. Qiantian looked down at the package and froze. The handwriting on the package looked familiar, but he thought about it. Wasn't this Boss Lin Yi's handwriting? That wasn't all, but the big stamp on the package made Qiantian's jaw drop. He almost fainted. What was written on it was Heaven Island Central Express Service Company. What the fuck? This was the first time Qiantian felt like he was suffocating ever since he became strong. His mind went blank. What kind of delivery company was this? Even the Heavenly Island had appeared. Could it be that Boss Lin Yi had sent the mail from the Heavenly Island? Isn't this a little too mystical? Such an exaggerated thing. The first reaction of a normal person's brain would be, something wasn't right, and Qiantian was no exception. He looked at this man suspiciously. Who sent this guy here? This whole setup was pretty good, wasn't it? Are you the recipient or not? Do you want to sign here? If not, I'll return it. The courier man felt goosebumps rising from the bottom of his heart. If it had been someone with a weaker mental fortitude, he would probably have turned around and run away. There was no other way. Nowadays, everyone was afraid of encountering a lunatic. Now that things had come to this, Qiantian didn't continue thinking about it. After all, everything else could be a lie, but this was Lin Yi Boss handwriting. It couldn't be fake, and no matter how he looked at it, this delivery man was indeed just an ordinary person. He didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Sign here. Of course I have to sign for it. Qiantian quickly said. It didn't matter if this was a trap or not, he had to take a good look at it. In the common world, a near-invincible heavenly grandmaster could ignore a trap or a trap. He didn't really believe it, but what if this really was from Boss Lin Yi? Here, sign here. You can send a reply within 30 days. This is my name card. Call me when you're done, and I'll come to pick it up. The courier man said as he handed the card to Chen Tian. Chen Tian's mouth twitched. What kind of world was this? Even delivery men were giving out name cards. Please call me when you're done. I'm leaving. The courier man nodded to Chen Tian and turned to leave. Wait. Chen Tian was startled and quickly pulled him back. Is there anything else? The deliverman's face was obviously guarded, and he even subconsciously got into a defensive posture. It was obvious that he was treating Chen Tian as a psychopath who might bite at any moment. Ugh. Chen Tian scratched his head awkwardly. What? What company is this? How can you deliver from Sky Class Island all the way here? We're Central Express. Haven't you heard of it? The courier man looked at him curiously. Nope. Never heard of it. Chen Tian shook his head. He never bought anything online, and no one would send him stuff for no reason. Naturally, he hadn't heard of it. But just because he hadn't heard of it didn't mean that other people hadn't heard of it. In fact, Central Express was a company that had risen recently. Not only were their distribution channels fast and smooth, but their delivery speed was also much faster than other delivery companies. Their prices were also very low, and so in just a few months, Central Express had quickly taken over the market. There was basically no one who didn't know about Central Express. Alright, although our Central Express has only been established for a short period of time, the current market scale is not below any of the top express delivery companies. Our logistics channels are spread all over the world, and there are many express deliveries from overseas, including many small islands, such as Hawaii. Although I have never heard of your heavenly island, I guess it should be a small island, the courier explained. Ha! Hawaii. What does that have to do with Sky Class Island? Chen Tian froze, thinking about it for a while before reacting. This guy didn't even know what Sky Class Island represented. He thought it was some small island in the ocean. I'm sorry, I've never been to Sky Class Island, but I guess it's something like that, the courier man said awkwardly. Does your company have a lot of these? Does it have anything to do with Sky Class Island? Chen Tian didn't want to give up. I'm not too sure about that. I'm just a high-level courier here. I'm usually in charge of international mail and some return receipts. Yours is a return receipt, the courier man said. Return receipt? Chen Tian paused. According to what the courier man said, he could get a reply within a month. He couldn't help but ask, then what kind of return receipt are you talking about? Where do you send it? Is it to the sender's place? Chapter 4401. Since it's sent from Sky Class Island, naturally it's sent back to Sky Class Island. Why else would it be called a receipt? The courier looked at Chen Tian weirdly. He felt that this person was not only crazy, but retarded as well. No, I mean, how did you send the letter to Sky Class Island? Chen Tian quickly asked. In fact, he was still wondering if he was dreaming. Sky Class Island had always been a place of legends, and if it wasn't for Lin Yi's boss passing through the portal, he wouldn't have believed that there was such a mysterious place in the world. But now, something even more unbelievable had happened. This so-called central delivery company was actually able to send letters back and forth between Sky Class Island and the common world. Even someone as knowledgeable as Chen Tian had to slap himself in the face to see if he was really still dreaming. But the handwriting was indeed Lin Yi boss handwriting. There was no doubt about that. If this was some kind of elaborate scam, then even Lin Yi boss handwriting could be imitated so flawlessly. And so, Chen Tian's current state of mind could only be described as half believing and half doubting. More accurately, 40% believing and 60% doubting. I'm sorry, I'm not too sure myself. I'm just a high-level courier, and I'm only in charge of the delivery. I don't ask about anything else. Plus, the logistics channel is a company secret, and normal people wouldn't know about it. I can only tell you that the letters are sent back to the headquarters first, and then transferred. The courier shrugged. Is that so? Thank you then. Seeing that he couldn't get any more information out of the courier, Chen Tian could only give up and let him go after signing the receipt. But although he said that, he didn't plan on letting it go just like that. No matter how he thought about it, this central courier was too suspicious. Sending letters back and forth between Sky Class Island and the common world, this was something that would topple anyone's worldview. If traveling back and forth between Sky Class Island and the common world was really that easy, Then Lin Yi boss wouldn't have had to go through all this trouble with so many top masters. Plus, now that more than a year had passed, if he could really go back and forth freely, even if boss Lin Yi wasn't done with his business, he would still come back to see everyone, right? Chen Tian's only thought now was to investigate this express delivery company that popped out of nowhere. But while he was a sky class perfected, he wasn't a professional, and if he had to do it himself, he'd have to fight his way up to their doorstep. Trying to investigate without leaving any traces would be a fool's errand. However, just because Chen Tian couldn't investigate this express delivery center didn't mean that other people couldn't do it. What happened? Speak of the devil. Ling Shan came down from the second floor with a glass of water in her hand. She couldn't help but ask when she saw Chen Tian staring blankly at a package. Sister-in-law Ling Shan, you came at the right time. I just received an express delivery. Can you see if you can investigate this express delivery company? Chen Tian said quickly. Ling Shan was from the Supernatural Investigation Department, and investigating a delivery company was a piece of cake. Ah, why do you need to investigate the express delivery company? Ling Shan asked, confused. She looked at Chen Tian with a weird expression, almost as weird as the guy from before. What kind of logic was this? Investigating the express delivery company? She drank some water right now. Didn't that mean she had to investigate the water factory? No, this express delivery company is weird, very weird. Chen Tian explained. Weird how? Did they scam you out of money? Ling Shan was getting more and more confused. Not really. Chen Tian was a sky class perfected, and no one in the common world would dare scam him out of money. He didn't lack it either, so he waved the package in his hand and smiled bitterly. It's a package that just came. It's from boss Lin Yi. Ling Shan spat out the tea in her mouth, almost falling down the stairs. She didn't even have time to care about the splashing tea. She didn't even know how she got there. Chen Tian didn't even finish his sentence before the package was snatched away by Ling Shan, and he was splashed with tea at the same time. It really is Lin Yi's handwriting. Ling Shan looked at the package, too shocked to say anything. Her eyes started to redden. Tears were welling up in her eyes, but they didn't come out. A whole year had passed. It had been a long time, and there was still no news from Lin Yi. She was worried about Lin Yi's safety every single day, and every single day felt like a year. Admittedly, Lin Yi was already very strong before he left, enough to crush all the top-class practitioners in the common world. But Sky Class Island was different. After all, it was a place of legends. How dangerous would it be? Would they be bullied and besieged because they were unfamiliar with the place? Even if the Heavenly Island really existed, it was still a mystery. Sometimes, Ling Shan would even wake up in the middle of the night because she couldn't help but worry. It had been so long, and he still hadn't come back. Did something happen to Lin Yi? She didn't think that she would receive a package from Lin Yi today, and from Sky Class Island at that. Ling Shan's reaction was the same as Chen Tian's, blanking out and feeling like her brain was lacking oxygen. Ling Shan's sis-in-law, do you think we should investigate this central delivery? Chen Tian said urgently. As far as he was concerned, there were only two possible outcomes if he could investigate the identity of this express delivery company. One was that the package was fake, and someone had forged Boss Lin's handwriting. That way, they'd be able to follow the clues and see through the scam. The other possibility was that the package was real, and that Lin Yi's boss had sent it personally from Sky Class Island. The meaning behind this was very tempting. If this central delivery really could travel freely between Sky Class Island and the common world, then wouldn't they be able to go to Sky Class Island and find boss Lin Yi if they could see through their methods? Chen Tian's thought was logical, and Ling Shan naturally thought of it as well. She didn't act impulsively. No matter what, let's gather everyone first. All right. Chen Tian couldn't wait to call everyone, leaving Ling Shan staring at Lin Yi's handwriting alone. Chapter 4402. She, of course, wanted to read the letter as soon as possible, but it wasn't appropriate to do so before everyone was gathered. She was Lin Yi's girlfriend, but if this letter was really written by Lin Yi, then it would be for everyone, not just her. As a result, the letter had to be opened in front of everyone. Ling Shan was feeling 100 claws scratching at her heart, but she could still hold it in for a little while. After receiving Chen Tian's call and knowing that Lin Yi had sent a package from Sky Class Island, everyone's first reaction was that this guy was either messing with them or had gone crazy. No one believed him. However, even if he didn't believe it, in less than 2 hours, everyone had already gathered at the Chu clan's villa. Han Xiaopa, Fatty Lai, Kong Xiaobo, Chen Yuqian, Cheng Yi, Su Shihan, Zhao Qikuan, Zhao Qijiu, Pai Jishan, Pai Jihai, Yu Bing, Ing Ziyu, and the others. Other than Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing who stayed at West Star Village, everyone from Lin Yi's group was present. The reason why they were able to arrive so quickly was not only because of their strong teamwork, but also because of the aftereffects from last time. Everyone was scared by the sudden attack from He Luodan and the others, and it was fortunate that Lin Dongfang came out to save them. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Lin Yi's boss went to Sky Class Island and entrusted these ladies to them. If anything were to happen to them, how would they be able to face Lin Yi? After the previous incident, everyone had learned their lesson. Although they still took turns to guard in pairs, they would not go too far if there was no special need. Once something happened, they would be able to rush to the villa within 2 hours, just like what was happening now. The first thing they did when they arrived at the villa was to drag Wu Chentian out. First, they'd beat the crap out of this guy. But when they saw the package in Ling Shan's hands, especially when they saw Lin Yi's signature on it, they couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Is this real? Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in disbelief, and they had a horrified expression as if they had seen a ghost. It could be real, it could also be fake. No matter what, this delivery center is definitely suspicious. We need to investigate this thoroughly, Chen Tian said confidently. Everyone frowned and thought about it. All of them nodded in agreement. That was indeed the case. Regardless of whether it was true or not, there was a need to investigate this express delivery company that had suddenly appeared. If the express delivery was fake, then it meant that there was definitely someone with ulterior motives behind it. They were using this express delivery in Boss Lin Yi's handwriting to make a fuss. If the express delivery was real, then it was even more necessary to investigate the identity of the Central Express Delivery Company. It was actually able to freely travel between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble sister-in-law Lingshan to step in. Everyone turned to Lingshan. The package from Sky Class Island was evidently a supernatural incident, and the Occult Investigation Department had the authority to investigate paranormal happenings. She was the most suitable person to handle this. I'll contact the Supernatural Investigation Bureau right away and let them investigate. Lingshan nodded. She cared about Lin Yi's safety more than anyone else, and this was something she couldn't pass on to anyone else. Then what about this express delivery? Should we open it? The group looked at each other. Almost all of them were Sky Class Full Mastery, and in the secular world, they shouldn't be afraid of anything. However, the arrival of this express delivery was really unimaginable. If it was anyone else, no matter how dense their nerves were, they would still have some doubts in their heart. Of course we have to open it. Lingshan, Chang Yi, Shirhan, and Ziyu said together. They were the bolder ones on this matter, and the reason was simple. They cared about Lin Yi the most. This express delivery might very well be a trap, but what if it wasn't? Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, they wouldn't just leave it like this. After all, Lin Yi sending a letter back wasn't something that would happen in real life, but it was something they would fantasize about in their dreams. Plus, their dreams had turned into reality. They couldn't just leave the door open because of a little bit of worry. All right, but before we open it, we need to take precautions first. Yu Qian and the others looked at each other. As men, they couldn't be more cowardly than these girls. Plus, they really wanted to know what was in this express delivery. With their Sky Class Full Mastery, bombs and the like posed no threat to them. Plus, this express delivery was flat, and it didn't look like it could contain a bomb. If there were no surprises, there should be a letter inside. But that didn't mean there was no danger. If this was a trap, then the letter might have some sort of colorless and odorless poison on it. They might be Sky Class Full Mastery, but if it really was some sort of poison, they might not be able to survive it. Just to be safe, Lingshan put on a pair of gloves with excellent insulation, the uniform of the Supernatural Investigation Department. Only then did she slowly open the express delivery under everyone's gaze. The group held their breaths, as expected. What they saw wasn't something dangerous, but a piece of station, a normal piece of stationery. If they had to point out the difference between it and other stationery, it would be that it was more refined and elegant. This is Lin Yi's handwriting, and the way he speaks is his usual style. There's no mistaking it. It's Lin Yi's handwriting. Ling Shan took a quick look and was overjoyed. If this was a trap, imitating Lin Yi's handwriting, that was possible. But even the way he spoke wasn't realistic. This meant that Lin Yi had definitely written this letter. This meant that this express delivery company that popped out of nowhere could really travel between Sky-class Island and the common world. This was unbelievable. Really? Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that. Their faces filled with joy. They hurriedly urged Lin Yi. What did Boss Lin say up there? How's he doing? Don't rush, I'm not done reading it yet. I'll give it to you guys right away. Ling Shan was afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold themselves back and would snatch it from them. She didn't have time to read it, so she quickly scanned through the letter and passed it to the group, passing it around. The group read it one by one, and those who couldn't wait came over to read it together or pestered Ling Shan to tell them the contents. They couldn't help but sigh as they listened. Chapter 4403. Without a doubt, the letter that everyone was reading was the one that Lin Yi wrote at the Middle Island auction. He didn't lack spirit jade anyway, and he just wanted to give it a try. Even if it didn't reach them, Lin Yi wouldn't feel that it was too much of a pity. However, even he himself wouldn't have thought that this letter would actually reach them. For safety reasons, the contents of the letter didn't touch on any confidential information. Basically, Lin Yi told her everything that had happened since he came to Sky-class Island, from when he first entered the welcoming pavilion to when he went to Central Island, including meeting Tianchan and Xueli, from the beginning to the end. The reason why Lin Yi didn't mind the details was because he wanted to let everyone know that he was safe and sound on Sky Island. On the other hand, he wanted everyone to have a general impression of Sky Island. After all, one's vision determined one's height. As practitioners, with Lin Yi's help, they would reach the same heights one day. Perhaps in order to increase their strength, they would have to go to Sky Island to train. It wasn't a bad thing to let them be mentally prepared now. Other than that, Lin Yi also mentioned in the letter that he already knew where Zhang Liju was, and he was trying his best to find him. One day, he would be able to go back and save the girls. He told everyone not to worry too much and not to worry too much. At the end of the letter, Lin Yi naturally asked about everyone's situation. After all, he already knew that this was a letter from the Middle Island auction. In theory, he should be able to receive a reply from everyone. Just like how everyone was worried about him, Lin Yi, who was on Sky Island, was also worried about his women and followers in the common world. The Chu Villa, which was usually peaceful, was bustling for an entire afternoon. Everyone read Lin Yi's letter once, and it wasn't enough. Ling Shan and the others even fought to read it a second time. Because it was his first time reading, it was very rough, and it was so rare to receive a letter from Lin Yi, so he had to read every word and sentence carefully. At the same time, those who couldn't get the chance to read it a second time were all excited, and they discussed the situation that Lin Yi mentioned in the letter. When it came to the exciting part, everyone was so excited that they couldn't wait to recreate the scene. Only then would they be able to enjoy themselves. After reading the letter, everyone's yearning for the Heaven Step Island had become even more intense. They were all looking forward to when Boss Lin Yi would return and bring them to the legendary Heaven Step Island. Everyone stayed together until night time and did not disperse. They were still enthusiastically discussing what they had seen and heard in Lin Yi's letter. Since they knew that Boss Lin Yi was fine, they didn't have to worry about him. Their original worries could now be completely put down. They also became more motivated and looked forward to the future. And in this process, Ling Shan's phone rang all of a sudden, and everyone shut their mouths as they stared at Ling Shan, waiting for her to finish the call. Everyone! The Occult Investigation Bureau's investigation on the delivery center is out. Ling Shan said to the group. How is it? How is it? Chen Tian and the others asked impatiently. Since Boss Lin Yi's letter was real, it meant that the courier center really had eyes and ears everywhere. This meant that the Central Express Delivery Center was really omnipotent and could freely travel between the Heavenly Island and the secular world. Of course, everyone wanted to know the details of such a magical express delivery company. I've already told them to send the information to my phone. Let's take a look. Ling Shan took out a projector and projected the information on the wall, making everyone gather in a circle to study it. After all, the Supernatural Investigation Bureau had an official background, and it was not an ordinary department. It had a lot of authority. The information that everyone saw was the result of collecting all kinds of information through many channels, including all kinds of public and private, and even some that could not be seen in the light. They didn't find anything suspicious after reading through the information. This was completely different from what they had expected. As a mysterious courier company that could connect to Heavenstep Island, there was no doubt that the courier center was carrying secrets that couldn't be told to anyone. However, after reading so much detailed information, everyone realized that although the logistics network of this express delivery company was indeed accessible and much more powerful than ordinary express delivery companies, other than that, there didn't seem to be anything magical about it. This courier center that popped out of nowhere really has a lot of secrets. The group looked at each other. Even the investigation department couldn't find out anything about it. This was no small matter. But the more it was like this, the more it proved that it wasn't normal. Think about it, if it was just a normal courier company, how could they escape the eyes and ears of the investigation department? How could they send a courier from Heavenstep Island? Wait a minute, this courier center is a foreign company, and its headquarters is in Europe? Chintian pointed at one of the documents, surprised. Express delivery companies were different from other industries. Only after they had taken root in the local area could they expand into the market and gain recognition. Therefore, many of them were local logistics companies. Everyone thought that the sudden rise of the Central Express Delivery Company should be no exception, but they did not expect it to be a completely foreign company, and its headquarters was in Europe. Oh, right. The group reacted and raised a new question. Who's the founder and boss? The information doesn't say. I'll get someone to look into it right now. Ling Shan realized this as well, and called the investigation department. The group had a feeling that if they could find out who this courier center's boss was, they might be able to find out who it was. After a while, the results came out. Firewolf Group. The four simple words made everyone look at each other, and it took a while for them to speak. There's something fishy about this. Looks like we'll have to contact Dofeng Bro about this. Ling Shan said, rubbing her chin. The group nodded as well. Red Conches and Firewolves were one, so Dofeng Bro could be considered as someone who had infiltrated Firewolf Group. Only he would be able to get to the bottom of this. Chapter 4404. None of the people present could hold themselves back after seeing Dofeng Bro's unexpected appearance. They were all laughing so hard they couldn't stand up straight. In the end, it was Ling Shan who came out and explained everything to Dofeng Bro, passing around Lin Yi's handwritten letter. Dofeng Bro was no less shocked than the others when he read the contents of Lin Yi's letter. He was alone in the Red Conch, and it had been a long time since he received any news from Lin Yi. This feeling of not knowing when the end would come was much more difficult to bear than the others. Fortunately, Lin Yi had left him the antidote before he left, so he didn't have to worry about his life. He was grateful to Lin Yi even now. How is it? Do you know anything about this central delivery? Ling Shan and the others asked impatiently. I'm not sure. I'm only in charge of a part of Red Conch's business, and it's hard for me to get involved in other matters. This central delivery seems to have been established not too long ago, and I don't have much to do with it. But I can go back and try to investigate, Dofeng Bro said. Is that so? Everyone couldn't help feeling disappointed. If they could figure out the ins and outs of the Central Express Delivery Company, they might be able to figure out how to freely travel between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. This matter was extremely important, but it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy to figure it out. Don't be too dejected. I have some power there, and I can't guarantee that I'll be able to get the core information, but we can at least try. No matter what, we'll be able to get some inside information, Dofeng Bro said to the others. Okay, we'll leave it to you then. The others nodded. In order to avoid suspicion, Dofeng Bro didn't stay in the villa for too long. He left under the cover of the night. Dofeng Bro was very efficient, and the others didn't have to wait long. Before they could leave the villa, Dofeng Bro sent a message the next morning. The express from Heaven Island is said to come from a small island in the sea near Las Vegas. That sea is the base of the Firewolf Group, and the core island is called Firewolf New Island. The express was sent from there, but it was sent from there before. I don't know. Looking at the message sent by Big Brother Feng, everyone could not help but fall silent. In fact, according to this inference, it was easy to infer that the express delivery should have arrived at Heaven Island before arriving at the new Firewolf Island. Although this speculation was shocking, it seemed to be the most reasonable one. In other words, in this new Firewolf Island, there was a large number of people. There was a high possibility that there was a special passage connected to Heavenly Island. However, Even if they were quite confident in this conjecture, there was nothing they could do to determine whether it was true or not. Only by seeing it with their own eyes would they know. However, the new Fire Wolf Island was the base of the Fire Wolf Gang. They couldn't just barge in with force, right? The strength of Heaven Realm Great Circle was enough to move unhindered in the secular world. However, they were not arrogant and conceited people. They had never felt that they were invincible in the world. Moreover, the previous incident had already given them a wake-up call. If Lin Dongfang had not appeared at the last moment to save the day, it would be hard to say how many people would have survived. Plus, Sky Class Full Mastery was only a threat in the common world. It was just like what Lin Yi said in the letter. Sky Class Full Mastery was only a threat in the common world. On the mysterious Sky Class Island, it was just like what Lin Yi said. Since the new Fire Wolf Island could be connected to Heaven Island, who knew what kind of masters were hiding there? If there was a master from Heaven Island, even if there was only one, it was not something the people here could handle. Qintian and the others may be hot-blooded people, but they weren't brainless. They wouldn't do something as stupid as charging in without knowing the enemy's background. Lingshan, sister-in-law, since we have a clear target, it seems that we can only trouble the Secret Investigation Department again. If we don't know the truth, we can't act rashly. The others looked at each other and said cautiously. Before Lin Yi left, he gave them the most important task, which was to protect the girls who were unconscious. Other than that, everything else was secondary. If they acted rashly to investigate the new island, or even cause trouble because of it, it would be putting the cart before the horse, and the loss would not be worth it. Yeah, that's the only thing we can do for now, but don't get your hopes up. If it were within Wuxia, the Occult Investigation Department would be able to investigate a little. But this island is a small island outside of Wuxia, and it's very secretive. Even the Occult Investigation Department wouldn't be able to extend their reach that far. We'd be thankful if we could get some outside information, Lingshan said. Right now, it's better to know as much as we can. Knowing some clues is better than not knowing anything. Although it's not the time for us to go against them completely, it's best to plan ahead. Only then can we be prepared. Be careful, don't let them find out. Yu Bing said in a low voice. Yes, Boss Lin Yi didn't tell us to deal with this courier or the new island behind it. Even if we want to investigate them, we need to be careful and not force our way in. We don't want unnecessary trouble. The others nodded in agreement. In any case, protecting the unconscious women was the most important thing. Otherwise, if they were not careful and provoked a strong enemy that they couldn't deal with, then it would be really difficult. They couldn't really hide in the West Star Mountain village and let Lin Dongfang, the great god, come out again, right? They were Boss Lin Yi's people, but they were still masters in their own right. They didn't have that thick of a skin to ask the old man for help whenever they needed it. Don't worry, everyone. I'll personally go back to the Secret Investigation Department to keep an eye on the island. Safety first, I promise we won't alert them. Lingshan nodded. Oh right, I almost forgot something important. The courier guy said that the letter Lin Yi boss sent us was a receipt. This means that we can reply to Lin Yi boss and have this courier deliver it to boss Lin Yi. Qintian slapped his forehead. We can reply? Why didn't you say so earlier? The group was surprised and happy, but their faces turned unfriendly. They grabbed Qintian and started beating him up. Luckily they hadn't left yet. Otherwise, they'd miss this important chance to send a message to boss Lin Yi. Chapter 4405. This time, even Lingshan, Chang Yi, Su Shihan, and Ziyu didn't let him go. They didn't care about their image as girls at all, rushing up and punching Qintian. It was a scene that made people's hair stand on end. If Lin Yi was here, he'd have to think twice about messing with these girls in the future. In less than 3 minutes, Qintian was beaten beyond recognition. In the chaos, his clothes were torn to shreds, and his hair was a mess. He looked pitiful, as if he'd just been abused. The crowd was laughing so hard that they almost collapsed on their stomachs. Brothers and sisters, please go easy on me, or I'll call the police. Qintian said with a wronged face. Fortunately, he was a physical practitioner, so he couldn't be beaten to death. Of course, the crowd wouldn't really kill him, but this image was too embarrassing. If someone took a picture of him and posted it, how would he face people in the future? You deserve it. It's your fault for delaying the military, delaying such an important message until now. You're not reliable at all. Everyone cursed, not a single one of them sympathizing with him. It had been almost an entire day since they'd received the package. A normal person would have said it right away, but Qiantian waited until now. Who else would they beat up if not him? It's just a bit late. It's not like I really forgot about it. What are you guys so nervous about? Qiantian scratched his head, speechless. He'd been focused on this package ever since he'd received it, thinking about what was going on behind the scenes. In fact, if it weren't for that flash of inspiration, he might have forgotten about it just like that. A whole 20 hours, and you call that a bit late? Everyone scoffed and ignored him. They gathered in a circle, unable to conceal their excitement as they discussed. Come. Let's talk about it. What should we write back to Boss Lin? It's simple. Everyone write one and send it out together? Fatty Lai suggested. Yes, everyone write one. Write as many as you want. I've decided. I'll write 50,000 words first. Ziyu said with pride. 50,000? Sister Ziyu, do you think you're writing a novel? That's right. 50,000 words is too much. 50,000 words written on paper is too thick. They might not even be willing to deliver it. I think 30,000 words should be enough. Shirhan said seriously. Everyone fainted. His 30,000 words were a thick stack. How much better was it compared to Ziyu's 50,000? Moreover, there were so many people present. If each of them wrote 30,000 words, it would add up to hundreds of thousands of words. How thick would the paper be? The courier service would probably go crazy, right? 30,000 words is too much. Everyone should be more realistic. Otherwise, even if Lin Yi received it, he'd have to go into isolation for a couple of days just to read it. Ling Shan couldn't help but laugh. That's a lot of words. Ling Shan couldn't help but laugh. Exactly. Sister-in-law Ling Shan is right. Everyone nodded in agreement and asked, what do you think the upper limit should be? About that. Ling Shan thought about it seriously for a long time before saying slowly, how about 20,000? Holy shit. Everyone collapsed, not sure if they should be laughing or crying. At the end of the day, it turns out that even you have 10,000 characters at the beginning? I can't help it, it's been a year. There's too many things I want to say. Ling Shan stuck her tongue out, embarrassed. It had been a whole year, and the things that had happened during that time were too many to talk about. Plus, women were emotional creatures, and no matter what happened, they'd always want to share it with the man they loved. Ling Shan was no exception. Because of the length of the letter, everyone gathered together and discussed enthusiastically for an entire hour. Finally, they reluctantly reached a consensus. One by one, they got a pen and paper, found a place to sit, and began to write. The atmosphere was very tense, as if a big exam was approaching. As for what they were going to write, they'd have to wait for Lin Yi to receive it on Sky Class Island. Of course, there was also the possibility that he wouldn't receive it. For example, the letter they were going to write might be too heavy and thick, and the courier service wouldn't send it. Sky Class Island, Nanzhou, Lunghai. Devil Lung City, which was already bustling with noise, was especially crowded today. The highly anticipated escort agency event of the South Continent had officially begun today. It was a festival in name, and it didn't sound like it had anything to do with most people. However, the truth was that in the chaotic Nanzhou seas, the escort agencies were far more than just a normal logistics organization. Due to the lack of a unified and powerful official force, many escort agencies played the role of maintaining order in the many seas of Antarctica to a large extent in addition to escorting escorts. Their existence was an indispensable deterrent to all sorts of small fries, including pirates. This was the truth. Although the South Continent seas were all chaotic places, there was still a huge difference in the degree of chaos between them. Usually, the sea regions with powerful escort agencies were relatively stable, while the sea regions with weak escort agencies, or even no escort agencies, were extremely chaotic. For example, the Lunghai Seas had the Four Seas Escort Agency, and so the order there had always been the best out of all the seas in Nanzhou. Another example was the Wei Arc Sea. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which was ranked 5th, was not as orderly as the Lunghai Seas, at least it wasn't out of control. However, there weren't any decent and powerful escort agencies in the Zhenduan Sea. Hence, its degree of chaos was far beyond that of the Dark Magic Sea region and the Verdant Arc Sea region. It had always been a gathering place for many pirates. Even if pirates brazenly discussed robberies, No one dared to be a busybody. This was because 7 out of 10 people in the vicinity were pirates, while the remaining 3 were brokers who specialized in selling stolen goods to pirates. Hence, without the existence of these escort agencies, the situation in the many seas would be far more chaotic and cruel than it was now. It was very likely that it would be in a mess, and even a slightly more prosperous city like the Langhai Sea would be nowhere to be seen. Hence, the Nanzhou Escort Agency Festival, which was held once every 5 years, gathered all the most powerful escort agencies in the Nanzhou Seas. It wasn't a simple gathering of the industry, but a core festival that everyone in the Nanzhou Seas paid close attention to. Chapter 4406. Not only would its outcome determine the ranking of the major escort agencies, but it would also affect the future power structure of the southern continent sea region. In the coming year, which sea region was safer and which sea region was more dangerous would depend on the direction of this grand event. At this moment, people from all walks of life had already gathered in the vast magic cold plaza. At a glance, it looked majestic, and there were all kinds of factions present. Many of them were invited to attend the ceremony, and many of them had come to watch the excitement. However, the most conspicuous group of people present were the escorts from the escort agencies. As Lin Yi looked at the dazzling array of escort agency flags and listened to Qi Wenhan's explanation, he couldn't help but be secretly surprised. Although the Southern Continent's escort agency grand event was hosted by the 5 major escort agencies, there were actually 32 agencies participating. In other words, almost all the escort agencies in the Southern Continent sea region were present. The Southern Continent's escort agency grand event truly lived up to its name. There was only one final objective of this grand meeting, and that was to decide on the 5 strongest escort agencies. There were 32 escort agencies present here, yet they had to compete for a mere 5 spots. The difficulty of this was obvious. Previously, Lin Yi had only been thinking about Wu Bao Liang and hadn't paid much attention to the Southern Continent's escort agency grand event. However, it seemed that it wouldn't be easy for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to maintain its position in the top 5. In the middle of the plaza, a temporary stage had been set up. It wasn't big, and there were only 5 seats on it. However, the people in each seat sat upright. Although they didn't make a sound, the aura of these 5 people was enough to suppress the entire crowd. The demeanor of experts was unmistakable. Among them, Qi Wenhan's father, Qi Mingyuan, was impressively present. Needless to say, this was the judging panel formed by the 5 major escort agencies. Thank you everyone for your support. I am the 4 Seas Escort Agency's head escort, Boundless Sea, representing the 5 major escort agencies. I pay my respects to all the heroes and warriors present here. The burly man sitting in the middle of the 5 suddenly stood up and cupped his hands. His voice was like a great bell and rumbled like thunder. It actually drowned out the clamor of the crowd, and the plaza quieted down. Everyone's gazes were involuntarily focused on the chief escort of the 4 Seas Escort Agency. Meanwhile, the escorts from the 32 escort agencies began to rub their palms together in eagerness as they waited for the official duel to begin. This was the best stage for them to show off. The South Continent's Escort Agency Grand Gathering was not only for the competition between the 5 major escort agencies, but also the highest stage for the competition between the escorts. To them, the importance of this grand gathering was akin to the ancient imperial examinations for scholars. It was directly related to their future. If he could perform outstandingly in this conference, even if he was unknown before, his value would definitely skyrocket. It was even possible for him to become the center of attention and enter the upper echelons of the escort agency. On behalf of the 5 major escort agencies, I announce the 37th South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly. Begin. Boundless Sea was clearly someone who disdained wasting words. He didn't bother with any pleasantries. He got straight to the point without saying anything. Let's get to the point. The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers. They admired Boundless Sea's direct and efficient style. To put it bluntly, Boundless Sea's style was very straightforward. Aside from the escorts from the 32 escort agencies, the rest of the crowd had gathered here purely to watch the escorts from the major escort agencies fight to the death. They wanted to see the intense scene where blood was shed with every strike, not the nonsense of those so-called big shots. If Boundless Sea had come up to give his report for an hour, then the majority of the crowd would probably have left. Even the escorts from the escort agencies would have started to doze off. The South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly has been held for so many years. The purpose of holding it is very clear. I believe everyone here knows this as well. It's to take advantage of this rare opportunity to conduct an examination together and improve the escorting skills of the escort agencies. Boundless Sea paused, then turned to the group of escorts and said in a low voice, "Escorting escorts is your main job. It's also the foundation for your survival. If you can't even do this well, what face do you have to be an escort agency? What right do you have to establish yourselves in the South Continent seas?" So in this grand assembly, all the competitions will revolve around escorting escorts. I believe no one has any objections to this, right? The escorts from the 32 escort agencies below the stage nodded in agreement. This was a grand event for South Continent's escort agencies. As escorts, they naturally had to compete in escorting goods. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly be asked to compete in image, temperament, or embroidery, right? It wasn't like they were competing for Invincible East. Very good. Next, head escort Zhao Bufan of the Divine Wind Escort Agency will announce the rules for the first round of the competition. Boundless Sea nodded slightly to the middle-aged man sitting to his right and then sat back down. Everyone, the judges have decided that the content of the first round of the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly will be a simulation of escorting escorts that is closely related to everyone's daily life. Escort robbery. Zhao Bufan continued Boundless Sea's words. Everyone's spirits rose when they heard this. Escort robbery. Just from the name alone, they could guess that even though it was the first round of the competition, it definitely wouldn't be easy. However, they were already mentally prepared. After all, in the past South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly, the competition was extremely bloody and cruel. There had never been a lack of deaths. This was also the usual style of the South Continent Sea. Otherwise, if such a highly anticipated escort agency Grand Assembly turned out to be a small scuffle without bloodshed, such a greenhouse competition that couldn't withstand the test, so what if they ended up as the top 5 escort agencies? Could they scare those vicious pirates? In the Southern Continent Sea, there were only 2 things that could truly obtain the right to speak. One was strength, and the other was fresh blood. Without either one of them, it would be impossible to suppress those lawless pirates, and they would only be reduced to a complete joke. The rules are very simple. Every escort agency will come out according to the order in which they drew lots. They will send out 4 golden core escorts to escort the escorts. The agency that drew the corresponding lot will also send out 4 golden core escorts to escort the escorts, Zhao Bufan announced. To put it plainly, it was a 4v4 team battle. However, what made Lin Yi curious was, why was it limited to golden core experts? This rule is actually very normal. Even the most powerful 4 Seas escort agency has most of its escorts at the golden core stage. It's not that they can't afford to invite nascent soul experts, it's just that if they have to trouble nascent soul experts to escort normal escorts, there won't be much profit for the agency. There's also no need for it, Qi Wenhan explained. Chapter 4407. I see. Lin Yi nodded his head in enlightenment. Although Heaven's Equal Security had a nascent soul expert like Housekeeper Song, he was only there to scare people and wouldn't personally go out to deliver the goods. Since it was a simulation, it naturally had to be restored to the most realistic situation. Usually, it was the Golden Core Stage Escort Masters who were sent out. Naturally, it was the Golden Core Stage Escort Masters who were sent out this time. Otherwise, it would be meaningless if all the major escort agencies sent out their strongest experts. If they sent nascent soul experts, even if they won, they wouldn't be able to display the true skills of the agencies. The 5 agencies that won in the end wouldn't be able to convince the public. The time limit is 1 incense stick's worth of time. If the escort party can successfully defend the escorted goods within the time limit, and all 4 escorts survive and annihilate their opponents, they will get 80 points. For every person the escort party loses, 10 points will be deducted. For every person the escort party survives, 10 points will also be deducted. On the other hand, if the guard doesn't manage to defend the item, they will get 0 points. On the other hand, the robber will get 80 points. With the same logic, for every person they lose, 10 points will be deducted. For every person the enemy survives, 10 points will be deducted. In this round, the 32 agencies will each get 1 chance to defend and 1 chance to rob. When added together, it will be the total points. Do you all understand the rules? Zhao Bufan said to everyone. Yes, sir. The group of escorts replied in unison with great tacit understanding. This rule sounds a little cruel. Lin Yi, on the other hand, couldn't help but be speechless. The rules of the first round of the tournament weren't so much a competition, it was more like killing each other. Moreover, they were using head count points, forcing you to kill each other. To sum it up, whether it was the side guarding or the side robbing, there was only one general principle for the armed escorts who were about to participate in the competition. While ensuring that they survived, they had to try their best to kill their opponents. Only then would they be able to get high points. Lin Yi had participated in all sorts of tests and competitions ever since he came to Sky-class Island, and while competition was encouraged as well, he'd never been in a competition like this, where he was forced to kill his opponent with a head count. All of this could only be attributed to the environment. Compared with the killing competition at present, the trial competitions of the 3 pavilions in the North Island were simply like playing house in a greenhouse. They were too comfortable and unchallenging. No one knew if it was an illusion or if it was real, but from this moment on, the guards of the 32 escort agencies suddenly had an additional layer of chilling killing intent on their bodies. The atmosphere suddenly became unusually solemn, as if they were soldiers who were about to go into battle. Layers of dark clouds floated across the sky, pressing down on everyone's heads. Brother Qi, what are your plans? Lin Yi looked at Qi Wenhan, then turned his head to look at the surrounding escort agencies. Since the rules of the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event were different every year, they had only just learned of the rules. The leaders of the various escort agencies were busy arranging their troops and formations at this moment. This was the first round of the competition. Whether they could win the first battle would directly determine the momentum of the escort agency and indirectly affect the direction of the competition. Therefore, it was of utmost importance and could not be lost. Hearing Lin Yi's question, the guards of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency all looked at Qi Wenhan. Chief Escort Qi Mingyuan was the judge on the stage, so the arrangement of the troops fell on the young master, Qi Wenhan. Everyone's future was naturally in Qi Wenhan's hands. That's a good question, Brother Ling. Although the format of the competition is different in every South Continent Escort Agency festival, the escort agencies that achieve good results in the end all use the same strategy, without exception. Qi Wenhan smiled mysteriously. Oh! Lin Yi could not help but be interested. The strategy is actually very simple. With a great reward, there will be brave men. Qi Wenhan glanced at the surrounding guards, then lowered his voice and revealed to Lin Yi. Old Master has already told me before that this competition will not be stingy with the reward, so I have been preparing for it for a long time. Otherwise, how could it have taken so long to scrape together the 300,000 spiritual jades that we paid to the Hong Consortium last time? Lin Yi suddenly understood. So it turned out that he had really been prepared for this long ago. Everyone, listen up. In this round of competition, regardless of whether you participate in guarding or robbing, regardless of the outcome, anyone from our agency who participates in the competition will receive a reward of 50,000 spiritual jades. Qi Wenhan announced to the crowd. As soon as he finished speaking, the guards of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency all gasped. Even Lin Yi was a little shocked. 50,000 spiritual jades was not a small sum. Many escorts would not be able to save up such a sum even after working hard for more than 10 years. The chief father and son were sparing no expense. But thinking about it carefully, in such a cruel competition, every participant was fighting with their lives on the line. Once they stepped into the competition, it meant that they would most likely die. This was not a joke. If there were no benefits, who would be willing to risk their lives for no reason? Only with great rewards would there be death warriors. Not only the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, but the other escort agencies also gave generous rewards to the participants. In order to obtain a good ranking in this year's South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meet, this was the most basic of sacrifices. Of course, for the various escort agencies, this kind of sacrifice was not completely without a reward. On the contrary, if they could win in the competition, or even make a name for themselves, the rewards were far more generous than what the average person could imagine. This was not because of the competition's rewards, but because the large chambers of commerce that had been specially invited to watch the competition had all made verbal promises in advance. Many of their large orders would be signed on the spot with the winning agency. At that time, the benefits involved would not be as simple as a mere few tens of thousands of spiritual jades. It would absolutely be an astronomical figure that was sufficient to affect the rise and fall of any escort agency. And even the 5 great escort agencies were no exception. Not only were these orders shocking profits, but they also directly determined the market share. It could be said to be extremely important. Therefore, the father and son, Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wanhan, were sparing no expense in order to preserve their influence. 50,000 spiritual jades. In the face of such a generous reward, the escorts of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency began to breathe heavily. Although every other escort agency had also offered generous rewards, there were only a few that had reached the amount of 50,000 spiritual jades. After all, compared to the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which was one of the 5 major escort agencies, the other escort agencies were still lacking in capital. 50,000 spiritual jades per person, including the 4 guards and 4 robbers in the first round of the competition, would add up to a total of 400,000 spiritual jades. This was equivalent to the annual profit of those escort agencies. How many of them could afford it? Chapter 4408. Young Master, count me in. Someone rushed to sign up. Me too. Me too. The others did not want to be left behind and eagerly signed up, afraid that the 8 spots would be snatched up by others. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but smile. Money makes the world go round. This saying was true. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this kind of competition was a death sentence. It was purely a high-risk job where one's life was on the line. However, in the face of the temptation of 50,000 spiritual jades, no one was afraid even if they became ghosts. Good. The escorts of my Heavens Equal Escort Agency are indeed courageous and insightful. I was right about you. How about this, those who are willing to fight, come to me and sign up first. I will then choose from among you. Qi Wanhan said happily. The power of the spiritual jade was truly limitless. In just a short period of time, the number of escorts from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had already reached more than 10, far exceeding the 8 spots required for the competition. This gave Qi Wanhan more or less leeway to arrange his troops. The first battle directly affected the morale of the entire competition. Whether or not they could get off to a good start was of utmost importance. If possible, each escort agency would send out as many strong people as possible. Even if they were not their trump cards, they would at least be the best in the agency. However, there was an important prerequisite. These people had to volunteer for the competition. After all, unlike a sect that had absolute control over its disciples, the relationship between an escort agency and its escorts was purely one of profit and employment. It was just like how it was in a normal escort business. Whether or not the escorts were willing to take on the job depended entirely on the escorts themselves. The agency could not force them, nor would it force them. A melon that was forcefully picked would not be sweet. Not to mention whether or not the escorts would accept the agency's offer. Even if they were forced to participate, they would only do the work without putting in the effort. In the end, the agency would still be the one suffering the loss. Therefore, if any escort agency wanted to achieve the best results in arranging their troops, they could only do what the Heavens Equal Escort Agency did. They could only use benefits to entice the escorts to volunteer for the competition like the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Only the best among them would have the strength and motivation to truly fight for the agency. As the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wanhan was usually the one in charge. Naturally, he knew the strength of these escorts like the back of his hand. His gaze swept over the faces of each of the registered escorts, and he had already made his decision. After all, he had been holed up in the inn for the past few days, making all sorts of preparations. These efforts were not in vain. Brotherling, what do you think? Qi Wanhan turned his head to ask Lin Yi. Although he already had a conclusion in his heart, he still had to consider Lin Yi's opinion. After all, Lin Yi was his most important trump card. Brother Qi, you are the commander-in-chief. How you arrange the troops is up to you. Whoever you say should be the one to go. Why are you asking me? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. With his strength, in the gold core stage, he was an invincible existence. For others, the first round of the competition was a narrow escape, but for him, there was no pressure at all. It was up to him whether to go or not. It all depended on whether or not Qi Wanhan had made such arrangements. If there weren't enough people, Lin Yi wouldn't have any objections even if he went up to make up the numbers. Haha. 2 heads are better than 1. Brotherling, you can also help me out. How about it? Brotherling, are you interested in going up to play? Qi Wanhan laughed heartily. For Lin Yi, this kind of competition was really just for fun. It depends on how Brother Qi arranges it. If I'm needed, then I'll go up. Lin Yi smiled faintly, then paused and said, but I'm more concerned about the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Will Wu Bao Liang go up in the first round of the competition? If he goes up, Brother Qi, you have to leave a spot for me. Wu Bao Liang was the secret military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary group. His status was almost equal to Cheng Haonan's. Now that the Poison Eye mercenary group was an important external aid for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, Wu Bao Liang was to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency just like Lin Yi was to the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. He was definitely a powerful trump card. In order to compete for the position of the top 5 escort agencies, if the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was determined to gain the upper hand in the first round of the competition, it was very likely that they would send out Wu Bao Liang. Lin Yi's original intention for this South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meeting was to fight against Wu Bao Liang. Even if he might not be able to draw the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, he would not let go of this chance. Otherwise, if he could not get rid of Wu Bao Liang in this meeting, it would not be so easy to deal with this guy in the future. Yes, before the drawing begins, each escort agency has to submit the list of participating escorts to the judging panel. I'll go tell the old man and ask him to pay attention. If there is one, I'll report Brother Ling's name. If there isn't, then forget it. Qi Wanhan nodded and said. Although he was also determined to win the first round of the competition, he did not intend to let Lin Yi participate in the first round. After all, he had positioned Lin Yi as a powerful trump card to turn the tables on Gan Hun at a critical moment. If he used him in the first round, not only would it be overkill, but it would also expose his own trump card and put him in a passive position in the following rounds. Moreover, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was one of the top 5 escort agencies. Even if they were ranked last, they still had enough confidence. As long as they were not too unlucky in drawing the lots, with the first-class experts in the agency, they should be able to get off to a good start. Therefore, there was no need for Lin Yi to participate in the first round of the competition. Of course, if it was because of Wu Bao Liang that Lin Yi decided to participate, then it would be a different story. Qi Wanhan immediately took a pen and paper and wrote down 2 lists of 8 people. One of them had Lin Yi in it, and the other did not have Lin Yi. This was to be used as a contingency plan. Then, he walked up to the stage in the middle in high spirits. At this time, because the drawing of lots was about to begin, most of the 32 agencies had already prepared a list of 8 people and submitted it to the judging panel. However, Qi Wanhan did not submit it immediately. Instead, he ran up to his father, Qi Mingyuan, and whispered a few words in his ear. Then, he walked down with the list and waited to the side. Not only Qi Wanhan, but the other agencies also had people waiting to the side. They all had one thing in common: they were all from the top 5 escort agencies. First, look at the list of participants from the other agencies. Once they knew their opponents, they would then make a targeted arrangement. This had always been the privilege of the top 5 escort agencies. This was something that the other agencies could not help but be envious of. Because there was no one on the judging panel, it was useless even if they deliberately delayed. They could not see the list of participants from the other agencies, so naturally, they could not target them. They could only rely on their own strength. Fortunately, the list of participants was submitted before the drawing of lots. Up until now, no one knew each other's opponents, so it was relatively fair. Chapter 4409. There wouldn't be a situation where an escort agency would be purposely targeted. The 5 escort agencies would at most make some minor adjustments to their strategy, and wouldn't specifically target one agency. Thus, everyone turned a blind eye to it and acted as though it was nothing out of the ordinary. As one of the 5 escort agencies, they had some privileges. In the South Continent Sea where the strong preyed on the weak, it was already rare to be able to achieve such a level of fairness. No one was stupid enough to ask for so-called true fairness. After waiting for a while, Qi Mingyuan finally saw the name list of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. He shook his head at Qi Wanhan, indicating that he didn't see Wu Bao Liang. Only then did Qi Wanhan hand in the 8 name lists that he had prepared in advance. Soon after, the representatives of the other 5 major escort agencies submitted their name lists. Compared to the newly promoted Heavens Equal Escort Agency, they were clearly more experienced in the way they did things. Qi Wanhan was waiting for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's name list while they were waiting for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's name list. The biggest competitor of the 5 escort agencies had always been each other. The threat that the other agencies posed to them was far from their own. After the 32 escort agencies submitted their name lists, Zhao Bufan represented the judging team and gathered all the people in charge of the escort agencies together. Under everyone's supervision, they started to draw lots in front of everyone. Since ancient times, in any form of competition, the drawing of lots had always been the segment where dirty tricks were most likely to occur. It was also the segment where it was most likely to be manipulated under the table. Therefore, everyone paid particular attention to it. As a result, not only were the judges from the 5 escort agencies watching the entire drawing process, but there were also the other powers that were invited to watch. Under the supervision of so many experts, if there was anyone who could play dirty tricks, that person would have to be as heaven-defying as Lin Yi. Very quickly, under everyone's gaze, the results of the drawing were announced. Not mentioning the other escort agencies, at least the Heavens Equal escort agency's draw wasn't too bad. After 2 draws, the opponent for the escort battle was the Horse Escort Agency, while the opponent for the escort robbery battle was Yongxing Escort Agency. What was worth rejoicing was that both the Horse Escort Agency and Yongxing Escort Agency weren't part of the 5 escort agencies. They were not part of the top 5 escort agencies. Not now, not in the past. Therefore, in terms of overall strength, it was obvious that the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was stronger. However, Qi Wanhan wasn't the least bit happy about the result of the draw. Although the strength of these 2 escort agencies couldn't compare to the 5 major escort agencies, they were definitely not weak. In the last South Continent Escort Agency Festival, these 2 companies ranked 11th and 13th respectively. Moreover, the strength of these 2 escort agencies was very stable. Not only in the previous Grand Assembly, but also in the previous Grand Assemblies. In other words, among all the 32 escort agencies, although the Noon Horse Escort Agency and Yongxing Escort Agency weren't the best, they were still the best. But it was completely worthy of the above-average evaluation. More importantly, they were different from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. In order to deal with the upcoming main event, Qi Wanhan still had to consider conserving his strength in case he ran out of stamina. However, neither the Noon Horse Escort Agency nor the Yongxing Escort Agency had such thoughts. Their typical strategy was to fight to the death with all their might in every match and would never deliberately conserve their strength. To them, the throne of the top 5 escort agencies was an unattainable dream. Their most realistic goal was to maintain their ranking. It was already a great success to be able to squeeze into the top 10 this time. Their previous rankings were obtained by fighting to the death with others. This time, they naturally had to fight to the death. Therefore, these 2 agencies were definitely very hard to deal with. It was no wonder that Qi Wanhan was frowning. This was the first time he had led a team to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Festival. If they got off to a bad start and failed miserably at the beginning, they would really be too ashamed to face others. Don't be nervous. We are the stronger side. There will be no problem as long as we perform as we normally do. They should be the ones who should be nervous. Lin Yi patted Qi Wanhan's shoulder and comforted him. Brother Ling is right. I was blinded by the situation. Qi Wanhan instantly broke out in a cold sweat. He turned his head to look at the group of escorts who were all focused on him, and nodded gratefully at Lin Yi. The general was the soldier's courage. The war had yet to officially begin, and if even he, the young master, was thrown into disarray, the impact on everyone's morale could be imagined. If he allowed this panic to spread, it was possible that the army would really be defeated like a collapsing mountain. Lin Yi smiled. He did not care too much about the results of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. However, he would not just stand by and watch Qi Wanhan and the others commit such a low-level mistake. Even if it was just for the sake of their friendship, he still wanted the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to maintain its position as one of the top 5 escort agencies. Otherwise, as the powerful trump card of the Qi father and son, Lin Yi would lose face. Looking at the matchups announced on the huge notice board, the escorts of the 32 escort agencies all rubbed their hands in glee. Finally, under the announcement of the judging panel, they all lined up and marched into their respective competition grounds. For every escort agency, there were 2 matches in the first round of the competition. One was to guard the escorts, and the other was to snatch the escorts. There was no time to adjust between the 2 matches, and they would start at the same time. In the huge magic cold square, the 32 escort agencies each occupied a space. In the center of each space, there was a treasure chest that had been prepared beforehand. This was their escorts, and it could also be said that this was their arena. 8 escorts would fight. 4 of them would be tasked with guarding their escorts and their arena, while the other 4 would be tasked with snatching the escorts from the opposing agency's arena. The judging panel gave the order, and the 32 matches of the first round began at the same time. In 32 arenas, 256 golden core stage escorts began to fight. The atmosphere in the square was instantly pushed to its peak, and deafening cheers and shouts soared into the sky. The escorts in the arena were either attacking, defending, confronting each other, or cruising around. Everyone was as if they were facing a formidable enemy, and none of them dared to let their guard down. At this moment, the people who were the busiest were not the escorts, but the people in charge of the various escort agencies. Qi Wanhan, for example, could not attend to both matches at the same time because they were held in 2 different arenas. In the end, he had no choice but to seek help from Steward Song, asking him to supervise the other escort robbery match. Steward Song's position in the Equal of Heaven escort agency was not inferior to Qi Wanhan's. With him supervising the match, the escorts did not dare to be negligent. However, in the face of Qi Wanhan's request for help, Steward Song shook his head mysteriously and pointed at Lin Yi. That's right. Qi Wanhan finally reacted, and he secretly praised Uncle Song's brilliance. How far-sighted. Chapter 44:10. Rather than having Uncle Song supervise the battle, it would be better to entrust this task to Ling Yi. Nominally, he was asking for his help, but in reality, he was showing that he valued this opportunity to improve their relationship, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Brother Ling, I can only entrust this matter to you. You must help me with this. Qi Wanhan turned to Lin Yi for help. Then, all right. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback, but he did not refuse and immediately agreed. Although he wasn't as deeply rooted in the escort agency as Steward Song, with his status and strength, especially his past achievements, everyone in the agency was still in awe of him. However, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to supervise a battle. Moreover, Lin Yi was also quite interested in this matter. He was used to fighting with others personally, but he had never been an on-the-spot coach before. Today was the perfect opportunity for him to have some fun. Qi Wanhan himself guarded the escort battle, while Lin Yi led the 4 golden core escorts to the arena of Yongxing Escort Agency to rob their escorts and fight them. At this moment, the 4 escorts from Yongxing Escort Agency had already entered the arena. They were all prepared to face a formidable enemy and were ready to fight. Just as Lin Yi had said to Qi Wanhan, Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was one of the 5 major escort agencies. Although the 4 escorts from Yongxing Escort Agency were prepared to fight to the death before entering the arena, they could not help but feel nervous at this time. However, the 4 escorts who had come with Lin Yi were not nervous at all. This was the way of the world. The more important the battle, the more critical the situation, the stronger the enemy. It was important to have confidence. If one was afraid before the battle, even if they had a 40% chance of winning, it would be reduced to 30%, or even less. Lin Yi sized up the strength of the 4. 2 were at the peak of the late Golden Core stage, and 2 were at the late Golden Core stage. In the Golden Core stage, their strength was considered relatively strong. It was considered average. If he was not mistaken, these should be the best under the command of Yongxing Escort Agency. Because the escort guarding battle and the escort robbing battle started at the same time, and there was a time limit of 30 minutes, the escort guarding side naturally had a certain advantage over the escort robbing side. Therefore, many escort agencies would put their experts in the escort guarding battle. This way they could guarantee the scoring rate. On the other hand, the 4 of them had 1 Golden Core Paragon and 3 Golden Core Late Stage. They were basically on par with each other, with neither an advantage nor a disadvantage. As for the direction of the match, it was entirely dependent on the performance of both sides. Remember, in the first half an incense stick of time, don't make any attacks. At most, make some probing feints, but don't get entangled with the opponent. This is a 4-man team battle. You must protect each other and not leave any openings for each other. Lin Yi quickly entered the role of an on-the-spot coach. The 4 of them couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Even if they had such a duel in the past, it would be impossible. No one had ever given him such a detailed strategy. At most, they would stand at the side and supervise the battle. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would be able to explain it in such a professional manner? Little did they know. Lin Yi was treating himself like a coach in the mundane world. Everything on the field was done by the players, of course, but Lin Yi didn't care. However, a truly brilliant coach would firmly grasp the direction of the match in his own hands, and then determine the final result. It was the same principle at this moment. But we only have 30 minutes. If we don't attack in the first half an incense stick of time, I'm afraid the remaining 30 minutes won't be enough, right? The four of them looked at each other hesitantly. Finally, the most powerful expert in the Golden Core Paragon spoke up. To be honest, although Lin Yi had not joined the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency for a long time, with his previous heaven-defying deeds, his dazzling identity, and the fact that he was the honorary escort chief personally promised by the chief escort chief, Qi Mingyuan, the four of them were actually in awe of Lin Yi. They dared not disobey Lin Yi's instructions. However, they were now risking their lives to fight. Regardless of whether it was for themselves or for the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, they had to win this match. Otherwise, if they didn't have this resolve, they would only die even faster in this cruel battle of life and death. That was why they were worried. What if they did not have enough time and failed to steal the goods? What would they do then? If they failed to steal the goods, they would not get a single point. Even if they survived, how would they face the entire escort agency? How would they have the face to take the 50,000 spiritual jades? After all, they still had to continue working in the escort agency in the future. They were all people who cared about their reputation. It was not a good feeling to be gossiped about behind their backs, or even pointed at in front of them. No, we have enough time. Lin Yi shook his head confidently. He analyzed the situation for the four of them. Don't misunderstand. This match may seem like a life-and-death match, but the key is not the killing, but the goods. Ha! Aren't we fighting for the number of points? The four of them could not help but look at each other. This first match was nominally about stealing the goods. However, anyone who had read the rules would know that it was obviously a competition of points based on the number of people killed. As for the goods, it was just a symbolic gimmick. Hee, if it's just a simple fight, don't you think it's too unskillful? Simple and violent tactics like this are very effective when you have the absolute advantage, but look at the opponent's strength. How confident do you think you'll be able to survive if you fight like this? Lin Yi asked. That's right. The four of them choked. They weren't fools. Both sides were equally matched in strength. If the competition continued to develop in a cruel direction, it wasn't impossible for all of them to be wiped out. It was already very rare for two of them to survive in the end. Remember, this match is not a simple fight. What you have to do is not only kill your opponent, but also protect yourselves. And the key to this lies in that box of goods. Lin Yi reminded them seriously. According to the rules of the match, whichever side has the goods will naturally have the upper hand. As long as they have the upper hand, they will be able to control the flow of the match. You will be able to secure points and escape unscathed at the same time. Hearing this, the four of them's eyes lit up. They were indeed fighting with the belief that they would die. However, if they could score points and escape unscathed at the same time, who would really want to die? Escort Leaderling, tell us what we should do. We will listen to you. The Golden Core Perfected Escort was the first to express his stance. Chapter 44:11. It's very simple. Just do as I said. Use the first half of the incense stick to test the waters. Wait for the other party to reveal a flaw, then strike hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember their numbers and listen to my instructions. You guys work together to kill whoever I tell you to. Don't hesitate, do you understand? Lin Yi paused for a moment, then pointed at the four guards from Yongxing Escort Agency. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember their numbers and listen to my instructions. Yes, sir. The four of them looked at each other and nodded. Then, they turned around and entered the arena. Success or failure depended on this one move. Seeing the four from Heaven's Equal Security Agency enter the arena, the four from Yongxing Security Agency, who were already on standby, looked at each other and became even more nervous. They did not know what the other party was planning, but they could at least sense one thing. The other party did not come with good intentions. So the Heaven's Equal Security Agency is only also. On the opposite side of the arena, a woman purposely shouted. Judging from her attire and the attitude of the people around her, she should be the person in charge of Yongxing Security Agency. Lin Yi looked at her in surprise. In the chaotic waters of the South Continent, It was naturally difficult for female cultivators to gain a foothold. Yet, this woman was able to become the person in charge of Yongxing Security Agency. It was quite rare. Only by overwhelming everything can one emerge victorious in the end. Other than that, all conspiracies and schemes are laughable, self-deceiving. Humph. You don't even understand such a basic principle. It seems like the Heavens Equal Security Agency is really useless. You can't even find someone who can hold up the front. You were lucky to be one of the top 5 security agencies last time. You don't live up to your reputation, the woman said mockingly. The people around her were instantly attracted to her. Lin Yi's gaze also landed on her. However, he only curled the corner of his mouth slightly. He had no intention of retorting. He was not in the mood to bicker with a woman in such an occasion. Not to mention anything else, the woman's words had at least one effect. The 4 escorts from Yongxing Security Agency were obviously not as nervous as before. Deliberately belittling their opponent might have side effects, but at least it could build confidence. In a situation where both parties were equally matched, having confidence was more important than anything else. At this moment, the participants from both sides were already standing in their respective positions. As the staff of the convention lit incense sticks by the side of the stage, the first round of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency versus the Yongxing Escort Agency had officially begun. A man's reputation is like a tree's shadow. After all, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was one of the 5 great escort agencies. It was only natural that they would have an advantage in terms of mentality and aura. Under such circumstances, the members of the Yongxing Escort Agency thought that the other party would attack them without hesitation. However, the reality was that the 4 members of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were cautious and maintained a tight formation so that they could take care of each other. He stood in confrontation with them from afar, and didn't seem to have any intention to attack. See? This is your opponent, this kind of coward who mutters for a long time but doesn't have the slightest bit of manliness. As a robber, he behaved like a coward, hiding in his shell and not daring to move. How could he be a match for our Yongxing Escort Agency? If we can't even beat this kind of trash, we can all go eat shit. Seeing this, the woman began to wantonly clamor again. The surrounding spectators burst into laughter. Although this escort leader of the Yongxing Escort Agency was a woman, her words were far more offensive than those of the other men. Moreover, she didn't need to care about bearing like men did. No matter how much she spoke, no one would blame her. This was simply infuriating. The 4 members of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were clearly starting to lose their cool after being provoked by this woman so brazenly. They were here to fight with their lives on the line, not to be ridiculed by this woman. With so many people watching, they couldn't afford to lose face like this. Moreover, in front of women, men were naturally extremely competitive creatures. Even if they were beaten until their faces were swollen, they would still try to act strong. This was an innate instinct that was written in their genes before they were even born. The 4 of them couldn't hold back their anger and finally launched their first attack. The strongest person, who had attained the Golden Elixir realm, was the first to attack. However, he wasn't completely blinded by anger. Although he attacked in anger, he consciously chose the weakest of the 4, the Golden Elixir realm, as a breakthrough point. Lin Yi watched this scene from the sidelines and didn't say anything to stop it. Although he had asked the 4 of them to restrain themselves during the first half of the incense stick, this kind of probing attack was not a bad idea. On the other side, the female escort leader of the Yongxing Escort Agency suddenly revealed a smug sneer, as if her scheme had succeeded. Although she was a shrewd person, she wouldn't go so far as to ridicule in front of so many people without caring about her image. The reason why she did this was to provoke her opponent into taking the initiative. The defending side had a natural advantage. As long as they could defend the escorts within the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they would be able to score. However, the female escort leader of the Yongxing Escort Agency wouldn't be satisfied so easily. She had placed the 4 strongest escorts in this escort battle. As for the escort robbery battle, she did not have any hope at all. This was because the opponent was the most powerful escort agency among the 32 escort agencies, the 4C's Escort Agency. It was no different from a fool's dream to want to score points from them. This defense battle was crucial to the entire Yongxing Escort Agency. Not only did they have to score points, but they also had to score as many points as possible. Only in this way would they not be left behind by the other escort agencies. Therefore, simply defending the escorts was not enough. She had to find a way to provoke her opponent into taking the initiative and making mistakes. Only in this way could they score points from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Based on the current situation, her provocative strategy was obviously working. In terms of individual strength, the expert in the Golden Elixir realm of the Equal Escort Agency was the strongest among the 8 people present. His choice of breakthrough point was the weakest of the 8, the Golden Elixir realm. At first glance it seemed very wise. However, since the Yongxing Escort Agency dared to use such a provocative strategy, how could they not be prepared at all? Raging fire burns the city. The 4 people of the Yongxing Escort Agency suddenly joined hands to form a seal. 4 walls of fire suddenly rose into the sky without warning, trapping the lone expert in the Golden Elixir realm of the Exceptional Escort Agency. From the looks of it, they were going to take this opportunity to annihilate him in one fell swoop. Oh no, hurry up and save him. Fortunately, the escorts of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency still remembered Lin Yi's instructions and didn't completely let the expert in the Golden Elixir realm of the Exceptional Escort Agency take the risk alone. Although the other 3 were a step behind, they could at least assist him. At this thought, the 3 of them hurriedly launched a joint attack. Chapter 44:12. Together with the Golden Core Perfection Realm Cultivator who was trapped in the Wall of Fire, they finally managed to break through the Wall of Fire and create a path of retreat for their own people. Finally, they managed to escape unscathed. Even so, the Golden Core Perfection Realm Cultivator was still battered and exhausted. Not only was his body charred by the opponent's flames, there was also a pungent burnt smell coming from his body. He looked exactly like a coal miner. She does have some tricks up her sleeve. Lin Yi frowned slightly at the sight. It seemed that the opponent had come prepared. This kind of joint attack was clearly practiced. Both sides seemed to be evenly matched, but if they were to fight head-on, the 4 of them would have a very slim chance of winning. Yo, you were so timid just now. How did a group of 1,000-year-old bastards suddenly turn into rabbit spirits? How did you escape so quickly? The woman from Yongxing Escort Agency made sarcastic remarks with her hands on her hips. She continued to mock the opponent's tactics, causing the onlookers to burst into laughter. The faces of the 4 people from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency turned as black as the bottom of a pot. If it weren't for the rules of the competition that forbade them from stepping out of the arena, they would have grabbed this bitch and given her a good beating. Now, however, they could only vent their anger on the 4 escorts. However, with the previous example, the 4 of them did not dare to act rashly. After all, the opponent's move, burning the city with raging fire, was not a joke. If the other 3 had not come to their rescue in time, the strongest among them, the Golden Core Perfection Realm Cultivator, would have been burnt to a crisp by now. However, if they were timid and did not dare to attack, the woman's words would definitely become more and more unpleasant. Not only would the 4 of them be embarrassed, but the entire Equal of Heaven Escort Agency would also become a laughingstock. What should they do? Unable to advance or retreat, the 4 of them subconsciously turned to look at Lin Yi. Under such circumstances, they could only pin their hopes on this highly regarded honorary escort leader. Lin Yi looked at the incense stick on the side of the arena. It was still far from half an incense stick's time. There was still quite a gap from the time he had expected. He smiled at the 4 of them and said, "Again. One more time?" The 4 of them couldn't help but stare blankly, and they were slightly puzzled in their hearts. However, when they saw Lin Yi's calm expression, they were influenced by him, and the panic they felt just now, which caught them off guard, disappeared. The 4 of them looked at each other and nodded. Since Lin Yi wanted them to test the waters again, there was nothing more to say. Let's do it again. Hee, you're finally starting to look like a man. But this time, you won't be able to return. The woman from Yongxing Escort Agency sneered. The previous attack was actually the best opportunity, but in the end, the other party managed to escape. It was a pity. It could only be said that the other party did not underestimate him as much as he had imagined. After being taunted and provoked like that, the other party was actually able to maintain a formation that supported each other, causing all his efforts to be in vain. However, it didn't matter. His side's move was Raging Fire Burning City. He had specially selected 4 experts with fire attribute spirit roots and trained them together for an entire year. In order to cultivate the tacit understanding between them, they were not even allowed to go out on a mission. It was for the sake of showing off in this year's South State Escort Agency Grand Event. Although the events of every South State Escort Agency Grand Event were different, the essence was the same, which was that there was bound to be a team battle. Because this was the situation that was most likely to be encountered in reality, and the format could not be changed much. Therefore, Yongxing Escort Agency had made preparations for this. It could be said that they spared no effort. It was performed by 2 experts at the peak of the late stage of the Golden Elixir Realm and 2 experts at the late stage of the Golden Elixir Realm, and they had specially trained together for an entire year. The power of this move, Raging Fire Burning City, was simply invincible in the Golden Elixir Realm. No matter how hard the other party tried, it would be in vain. It was pure wishful thinking to break through their defense line. After the confrontation just now, the 4 people of Yongxing Escort Agency were now completely in the zone. Between the 4 of them, there was a faint fluctuation of genuine qi. It was clear that they had joined together as a whole. The scorching heat emitted from their bodies seemed to be able to engulf people at any time, giving off an ominous feeling of extreme danger. Compared to before, the 4 people of Yongxing Escort Agency were obviously much more cautious in their probing attack this time. They were still at the exceptional stage of the Golden Elixir Realm and chose to break through the other party's late stage of the Golden Elixir Realm. The only difference was that this time, the 4 people's formation was tighter. It was more convenient for them to take care of each other, and at the same time, they were less likely to be separated by the other party. Raging Fire Burning City. Another 4 walls of fire shot up into the sky. This time, not only the exceptional stage of the Golden Elixir Realm who was at the forefront, but the other 3 people of Yongxing Escort Agency were also affected. Although they finally broke through the wall of fire, they were all emitting a burnt smell and were in a sorry state. The surrounding onlookers could not help but point fingers at them. As one of the top 5 escort agencies, they had initially thought that Yongxing Escort Agency would at least have the upper hand. However, from the looks of it, it seemed that they had no upper hand at all. They were being completely crushed by Yongxing Escort Agency. From the looks of it, Yongxing Escort Agency was very likely to become a dark horse this year and replace Yongxing Escort Agency's position. Humph. You don't know what's good for you. I advise the 4 of you to hide and not move. Otherwise, if you are all burned to ashes, everyone will say that Yongxing Escort Agency is a bully. That would be embarrassing for everyone, wouldn't it? Seeing this, the woman chattered even more incessantly. As usual, she provoked everyone's nerves. She was a classic example of someone who did not show mercy when she had the upper hand. What should we do? The 4 people of Yongxing Escort Agency clenched their teeth. They could not swallow this humiliation, but they did not dare to act rashly. They had already suffered twice in a row. The first time, it could be said that they had underestimated their enemy. However, the second time was not the case. If this went on, they really had no chance of winning. Second brother D, can you do it or not? Do you have the confidence to kill Shorty number 4? The few of them turned to look at Golden Core perfected in unison. This person's surname was D, and he was the second child in his family. Therefore, everyone in the escort agency called him Second Brother D. As for Shorty number 4, he was the person whose number Lin Yi had just called out. He was also the weakest person in the late-stage Golden Core realm. It's very difficult. Although Shorty number 4 is not much, when he works together with the other 3, their teamwork is very good. If we attack him, it means that we have to deal with all 4 of them at the same time. If we really want to kill him by force, at least 2 of us will die. Second Brother D shook his head helplessly. The crowd could not help but fall silent. They would have to lose at least 2 of their own in order to kill the weakest person in the late-stage Golden Core realm. There was no chance of winning at all. What should they do? Left with no choice, they could only ask for help from Lin Yi again. However, Lin Yi smiled and pointed to the half-burned incense stick beside him. Unhurriedly he said, "It's not time yet. Sit down and rest for a while." Chapter 44:13. Huh! The 4 of them were dumbfounded. However, seeing that Lin Yi did not look like he was joking, they could only sit down doubtfully. Now that the situation had developed to this stage, if they were to fight recklessly, they would be completely annihilated. Instead of that, they might as well trust this honorary escort leader who had repeatedly performed astounding feats. Following Lin Yi's instructions, the 4 escorts of the Heavens Equal Security Agency actually sat down cross-legged in front of everyone. This scene caused a commotion among the onlookers as they scratched their heads in bewilderment. What is this fellow up to? The female escort leader of the Yongxing Security Agency was also stunned. She had put in a lot of effort for the sake of this South Continent Escort Agency festival. Even though she had drawn 2 of the top 5 escort agencies, the 4 Seas Escort Agency and the Heavens Equal Security Agency, and the prospects looked bleak, it did not stop her from pursuing her ambitions. Even if she could not take down the 4 Seas Escort Agency, she was determined to take down the Heavens Equal Security Agency that had delivered itself to her doorstep. After the 2 confrontations, the Yongxing Security Agency's situation was looking good. Everyone thought that the outcome of the duel had been decided, and that it would depend on how many of the Heavens Equal Security Agency's men would die. Who would have thought that the Heavens Equal Security Agency's response would be so unexpected? Sitting cross-legged. Did this mean that they were ready to surrender because they knew that they could not win? The female escort leader was momentarily puzzled. As for the 4 escorts of the Yongxing Security Agency, as time ticked by, they had initially been in high spirits. In the end, they became flustered. Before they entered the arena, they had been instructed not to leave the escort and initiate the attack no matter what. Therefore, even if the Heavens Equal Security Agency's men were lying down and sleeping, they would not dare to make a move. Humph, such petty tricks. How dare you play psychological warfare with me? The female escort thought that she had seen through Lin Yi's sinister intentions. She laughed coldly and gave up on her original plan. She waved her hand and said, "Since they don't dare to attack, let's go. Then let's go and kill them all. I'll get 80 points for sure." As soon as he said that, the 4 escorts of Yongxing Escort Agency were like tigers that had been freed from their shackles. Instantly, they showed their ferocious and sharp claws and teeth and immediately attacked together. They had been waiting for these words. The 4 men from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency could not help but feel their hearts clench as they faced the menacing enemy. Although they had entered the arena with the determination to fight to the death, they were really helpless in the face of the opponent's raging Inferno City. The 4 of them looked at Lin Yi, but saw that Lin Yi was still indifferent. Seeing that the other party was getting closer and closer, they could only grit their teeth and stand up helplessly. Since things had already come to this, they could only choose to exchange their lives for theirs. Other things aside, even if they had to sacrifice 2 lives, they had to break through the 4th shorty. Kill! The 4 of them suddenly emitted a solemn and stirring aura, knowing that there was a tiger in the mountain. They were using their actions to prove the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency's reputation. There were no weaklings among the 5 escort agencies. Ridiculous! The female head of Yongxing Escort Agency laughed scornfully. After painstakingly practicing the raging Inferno City for a year, the last thing he was afraid of was fighting head-on with others. If the opponent was a nascent soul stage expert, then it would be fine. However, if the opponent was only a golden core stage, then fighting head-on would be suicide. Among the 4 of them, the golden core stage seemed to be the weakest link. However, if they really used him as a breakthrough point, then they would not even know how they died. The crowd at the side could not help but hold their breaths. The first round of the competition was purely a meat grinder. With 4 against 4, no one knew how many would survive in the end. Just as the 2 sides were about to engage in close combat, at the critical moment, Lin Yi's voice suddenly rang out from the side, "Number 1. The rest of the crowd did not understand what he meant. While they were still confused, they saw the 4 men from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency suddenly change their target. From the opponent's weakest, the Golden Core Stage, to the opponent's strongest, the Peak Golden Core Stage. Haha, I've never seen such idiots. Originally, I only wanted 2 dead. This time, I'll wipe you all out." The female escort of the Yongxing Escort Agency laughed proudly. They could not even break through the weakest, the Golden Core Stage, and yet they wanted to fight the strongest, the Peak Golden Core Stage. Wasn't this courting death? However, just as the woman's laughter rang out, it stopped abruptly. It was as if a duck had been suddenly grabbed by the neck. It was indescribably comical. However, the crowd did not find this comical at all. Instead, all of their mouths were wide open. This was because the strongest, the Peak Golden Core Stage of the Yongxing Escort Agency, had actually been killed by the 4 men from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency in a single move. This scene shocked everyone. Even the 4 members of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, who had managed to pull off such a feat, found it inconceivable. Previously, he couldn't even break through the weakest late stage of Gold Core, and just now, he didn't have the slightest intention of underestimating him. He was still burning the city with fire. But why did it become so easy after he changed his target to the strongest peak late stage of Gold Core? At first, they thought that at least 2 of them would die. However, None of the 4 men had died. They were only wounded. How did you know? Steward Song asked, standing behind Lin Yi without him noticing. It's simple. Their raging inferno city relies on their tacit understanding. Although the golden core stage is the weakest, he has the best teamwork with the others. Therefore, it is the most difficult to break through. However, the peak golden core stage, which is the strongest, is the exact opposite. Therefore, he is the best breakthrough point. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Since he claimed to be an on-the-spot coach, he naturally had to fulfill his duty as a coach. Although he was just standing at the side and doing nothing, he had been observing the opponent's flaws. Previously, when the opponent did not take the initiative to attack, this flaw was not so obvious. However, now, it was as obvious as a fly on a bald man's head. Watching her own people fall, the female escort of the Yongxing escort agency's face turned ashen. The raging inferno city was a 4-person joint attack. Without any one of them, it could not be performed. They were doomed. Young hero Ling, you are indeed talented. I'm impressed, Steward Song said sincerely. At this stage, everyone could see that the outcome was already decided. One of the Yongxing escort agency's members had died. Not only was their joint attack broken, but the 4 men from the Equal of Heaven escort agency also took the opportunity to snatch away the escorts. Haha, you're flattering me, Elder Song. I just like the look on some people's faces when they eat shit. Lin Yi smiled, looking pointedly at the arrogant female escort on the other side. The surrounding people's gazes became playful. Just now, this female escort had threatened to eat shit if she could not defeat the Equal of Heaven escort agency. Who knew if she would keep her word? Chapter 44:14. This time, the female escort was no longer arrogant. She lowered her head in silence and did not dare to speak again. She did not even dare to look at the crowd as she crept away like an ostrich. In the end, the duel ended with the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's complete victory. They successfully snatched the escort, and none of the 4 of them died. At the cost of 2 serious injuries and 2 light injuries, they managed to kill 2 of their opponents. Their final score was 60 points. This score was considered very high in the entire competition. After all, it was limited to Golden Core experts, so the difference between the escort agencies could not be fully reflected. It was very difficult for a completely one-sided situation to occur. One had to know that even the strongest escort agency, the 4 Seas escort agency, only had 50 points in the escort battle, which was 10 points lower than the Heaven's Equal escort agency. However, when the escort battle and escort battle were combined, the 4 Seas escort agency was far ahead. This was because it had won the escort battle against the Yongxing agency's second line of defense and obtained 70 points. In total, it was a total of 120 points. However, although the Heaven's Equal escort agency had performed outstandingly in the escort battle, Qi Wenhan's performance in the escort battle could only be described as dismal. The escort battle had performed so well because of Lin Yi's on-the-spot command. Otherwise, forget about obtaining 60 points, they might not even have been able to snatch the escort. Not to mention obtaining a single point, they might even have lost a few lives. Qi Wenhan, on the other hand, was in charge of the escort team, but he didn't have the same sense of leadership as Lin Yi. He was just like the other escorts, telling them to look out for each other at most. There was no effective strategy to speak of, and Qi Wenhan's role as the young master supervisor was to raise morale. The Noon Horse Escort Agency was a notch stronger than the Yongxing Escort Agency. Moreover, the style of this escort agency had always been to fight to the death with others regardless of the cost. Therefore, as long as there was a competition every year, the competition would always develop in the direction of the most tragic way possible. This time was no exception. In the end, of the 4 people from the Noon Horse Escort Agency, 3 died on the spot, and the last one was severely injured and on the verge of death. As for the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, although they had managed to protect the goods with great difficulty, they had also paid the price of 3 lives. In a short period of the time for an incense stick to burn, 6 people had successively lost their lives in this small area, and everywhere within their field of vision was dazzling fresh blood. Even though everyone was accustomed to all sorts of battles in the southern continent sea, they still couldn't help but feel shocked. His nerves had long since become numb, but in the face of such a bloody scene, he still could not help but not dare to look directly at it. In fact, his hair even stood on end. Qi Wenhan's face was ashen, and he was speechless for a long time. Although he had thought that this match wouldn't be easy to win, as the Wu Ma escort agency was publicly acknowledged to be an extremely difficult bone to chew, he had never thought that it would be to this extent. One had to know that in order to ensure that they could score points in the dark guarding battle, he had sent out all the top-notch experts who had volunteered to join the fight. Their strength was a notch higher than that of Lin Yi's escort robbery team. But in the end, he ended up in such a cruel state. How could this be tolerated? Looking at the ghastly corpses on the field, not only Qi Wenhan, but the other members of the escort agency also wore solemn expressions. They could not help but grieve for the loss of their own kind. Just an incense stick's time ago, they were still talking and laughing with each other. But now, they were separated by life and death. Moreover, they had been brutally murdered in front of their eyes. This kind of feeling was truly horrifying. Because if the ones who had entered the field were not these people, but themselves, they would have become corpses on the field as well. It could not be helped. This had always been the style of the South Continent's escort agency. It was extremely bloody and extremely cruel. If any escort agency wanted to stand out, not only did they need great strength, they also had to stake their lives. If they did not pay a high enough price, how could they stand out? At this moment, Qi Wenhan's face was dark. 3 of the top-notch experts of the escort agency had died in a short period of time. This kind of price was too heavy to pay. The only consolation was that they had paid the price of 3 lives, but they had managed to pass this round of guarding the goods without any mishap. In the end, they had obtained 40 points. This score was not considered high, but if one did not care about the price, it was barely acceptable. However, compared to the results of Lin Yi's side, it was completely inadequate. Not only had Lin Yi led 4 people out of the field unscathed, but he had also successfully obtained a high score of 60 points. This gave the Gloomy Heavens Equal Escort Agency a shot of adrenaline. As for the young master, Qi Wenhan, who had suffered a heavy blow, he was finally no longer frowning. He thanked Lin Yi profusely. Lin Yi had helped him out of a difficult situation. This was the first time he had led a team to participate in the South Continent's escort agency's grand event. It was the perfect time to demonstrate his leadership skills and establish his prestige. If he did not have outstanding results, even if he was Qi Mingyuan's only son, it would be difficult for him to truly take over the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Fortunately, Lin Yi had saved the day. Disregarding everything else, at least in terms of points, they had already far exceeded their expectations. It was enough to make the entire escort agency rejoice. The total score for the first round of the competition was 100 points. Although it couldn't compare to the 120 points obtained by the 4 Seas escort agency, it was still one of the best. Even when compared to the other 5 great escort agencies, the 4 Seas escort agency wasn't the slightest bit inferior. In fact, the 4 Seas escort agency might even surpass them. The first round of the competition had ended. When the rankings of each escort agency were announced on the huge notice board, the audience was in an uproar. The 4 Seas escort agency was fully deserving of the first place, while the second place was actually tied with 2 other escort agencies: the Divine Wind Escort Agency and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. The Divine Wind Escort Agency had been ranked as one of the 5 major escort agencies for many years and was publicly recognized as a traditional tyrant. Its strength and foundation were comparable to that of the 4 Seas escort agency. No one would find it strange that it was ranked second. However, the fact that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was also tied for second was truly a shock to many people. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was also one of the 5 major escort agencies, it had barely managed to get on the last train in the previous competition. In the past, it had always been ranked 7th or 8th. If not for the fact that one of the original 5 major escort agencies, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, had split due to internal strife and had been lucky in the previous competition, it would have been impossible for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to become one of the 5 major escort agencies under normal circumstances. Therefore, in the eyes of most professionals, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's ranking as one of the 5 major escort agencies was purely picked up by luck. It definitely did not live up to its name. This time, they were all waiting to see the Heavens Equal Escort Agency make a fool of itself. In fact, there was even a special betting area set up in the periphery, betting that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency would fall out of the 5 major escort agencies. No one had expected the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to display such formidable strength in the first round of the competition. It did not lose to the traditional tyrants at all. If this continued, many people in the audience would go bankrupt. Chapter 44:15. As soon as the rankings were announced, the Southern Continent Chamber of Commerce, who had been waiting for a long time, all brought large orders to their respective escort agencies. The higher up the rankings, the more attention they received. In the past, in every South Continent's escort agency grand meet, the most popular escort agencies were always the few traditional tyrants. They ate the meat, while the rest of the escort agencies could only drink some watery soup. The smaller escort agencies that ranked at the bottom didn't even get any watery soup, and could only watch from the sidelines with envy. 5 years ago, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had always been in the thin soup ranks. Even though they had managed to become one of the 5 great escort agencies, they weren't as popular as the traditional powerhouses. This time, however, they had finally stepped into the meat ranks. At this moment, Qi Wenhan was surrounded by a group of people. They were the shopkeepers and stewards of more than 10 large and small chamber of commerce. Among them, Honest Chai's Hong Chamber of Commerce was the most dazzling. Whether it was in terms of quantity or quality, they could already stand on equal footing with the other traditional powerhouses. Even the people from the Four Seas Escort Agency and the Divine Wind Escort Agency couldn't help but feel a little envious of such a lively scene, let alone the small escort agencies that were just trying to get their hands on some thin soup. Now that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had suddenly risen, they had gained another competitor to snatch the meat from. As the head escort of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Qi Mingyuan had originally felt a bit inferior when he sat with the heads of the other 5 escort agencies. Now, he straightened his back, and people like Boundless Sea and Zhao Bufan finally took the initiative to talk to Qi Mingyuan. Strength determined the right to speak. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had been one of the 5 great escort agencies for 5 years, it was only now that they had truly begun to receive the acknowledgement of the other 5 escort agencies. Among them, Lin Yi, who was their honorary escort head, could be said to have played a major role. After 2 hours of rest, the escort agencies and the various Chamber of Commerce gathered together. After the first round of negotiations, the second round of the competition slowly began. The various escort agencies began to rub their palms. The leader had to maintain his lead, while the laggards had to catch up. Although many of the Chamber of Commerce had already placed large orders, businessmen never put all their eggs in one basket. They still had a large number of orders in their hands. As long as they performed well in the following rounds, it was entirely possible for them to catch up. They would step into the meat ranks. The second round of the competition will also be closely related to your darting skills. It will be dangerous navigation, Boundless Sea announced to everyone. Everyone nodded when they heard this name. The escort agencies in other places might not need to go to sea for their entire lives because they were on land, but in the various seas of the South Continent, if one didn't have proficient sailing skills, it was impossible to become an escort. That was because any escort business here had to go out to sea. The rules of the competition are very simple. Each escort agency will send out a golden core stage escort to sail the ship alone through a section of the sea. There were miasma, hidden reefs, whirlpools, and some pirates. In any case, anything that you might encounter in a bounty hunt will appear in a match. Boundless Sea explained the rules to everyone. Designated pirates? Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. Everything else was understandable. But this, designated pirates, sounded a bit strange. Brotherling, you might not know this, but the so-called designated pirates are often stationed in the same place. As long as a ship passes through their range of sight, they will chase after it and rob it. Normally speaking, most pirates are roaming about, but in the seas of the South Continent, because of the sea mist and the like as a cover, there are actually quite a few of these designated pirates. After all, it's more comfortable, Qi Wenhan explained. Then are the designated pirates in this competition real pirates? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask curiously. That's impossible. Escort agencies can compromise with pirates during a bounty hunt, but this is the Southern Continent Escort Festival. No matter what kind of pirates they are, they will definitely kill as many as they come. And why would real pirates cooperate with us in a competition? Qi Wenhan laughed and speculated. If I'm not mistaken, these designated pirates should be people from the 5 great escort agency pretending to be them. There have been similar competitions in the past, and they've always done this. Since they know they're on the same side, then aren't these designated pirates just going through the motions? They can't really kill each other, right? Lin Yi didn't think much of it. Haha, Brotherling, you're wrong on this point. Look at the situation in the first round. Killing each other isn't common in other competitions. But here, It's a common occurrence. Even if these designated pirates are people from the 5 great escort agency pretending to be them, once they encounter them, they will definitely kill each other. When that time comes, it'll be at least 5 against 1. If you meet them, you'll definitely die. Qi Wenhan sighed and shook his head. All of the escorts from the escort agencies will compete on a predetermined new sea route. No one has traveled this route before, so all of the reefs and whirlpools you encounter along the way, including the pirates, are completely random. Boundless Sea continued to explain the rules. Everyone was silent. This type of competition seemed simple. You just needed to sail the ship out to sea. There was no need to risk your life like in the first round, but the true experts could already see the dangers. A completely unfamiliar sea route was a huge challenge for any navigator. No matter how experienced they were, there was still the risk of capsizing in a ditch. Under the sea fog that covered the sky, any reef, any whirlpool could very well be fatal. And if you encountered a designated pirate, you wouldn't even have a chance to survive. I'll say one more thing. The designated pirates are sent by the 5 great escort agency. We, the 5 judges, will each choose a set of coordinates. After randomly shuffling the numbers, we'll come up with new random coordinates. In other words, including us 5 judges, no one will be able to predict the location of the pirates beforehand. We can guarantee absolute fairness. If you have any questions, you can raise them now, Boundless Sea said loudly. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. No one said anything. Even though it was hard to say how it would be carried out, from the design of the rules, there wasn't much to nitpick about. Even the people from the 5 great escort agency would find it difficult to tamper with the rules. Of course, because the designated pirates were made up of people from the 5 great escort agency, if they really encountered them, the participants from the 5 great escort agency would have a slight advantage over the other escort agencies. After all, the pirates had their own people. However, in this type of competition, if they encountered a designated pirate, they would naturally be eliminated. Chapter 44:16. As a result, it didn't matter much whether or not there were people on the same side, and it didn't really affect the results of the match. As a result, everyone turned a blind eye to it and didn't have any objections. Dare I ask Chief Escort C, are the new sea routes we take different from each other, or are we all on the same stretch of sea routes? Someone in the crowd suddenly asked. I can clearly tell everyone this. All of the competitors are on the same stretch of sea routes in the same area. Everyone's routes are roughly the same. However, in order to prevent people from being passive and purposely following behind others to test the waters, there must be at least 20 meters between each ship at the departure dock. Right now, the fog is at its thickest. Once you enter the sea, you won't be able to see anything within 20 meters, and it'll be very difficult to determine each other's position, Boundless Sea calmly explained. Then what if someone tries to cheat and turns back halfway through the journey? What happens then? Someone in the crowd asked. As soon as this was said, everyone couldn't help but perk up their ears. There really was someone in the crowd who had this sort of plan. Good question. For this round of Dangerous Domain Voyage, the starting and ending points are all set at Cold Magic Pier. However, 20 li away, there is a point that everyone must pass through. The staff members of the convention are already quietly waiting for everyone there. Only after obtaining their stamp of approval can you all return to the ship. Only then will your scores for this round be counted. If anyone dares to cheat and turn back midway, not only will they not get any points, their escort agency will also be heavily fined. They will be fined 300,000 spirit jades. Boundless Sea replied. Then what are the specific points? How are they calculated? Someone asked amidst the uproar. That's very simple. Based on how long everyone takes to pass, those who pass within 1 incense stick of time will get 200 points. Those who pass within 2 incense sticks of time will get 100 points. Those who pass within 3 incense sticks of time will get 50 points. Those who pass within 4 incense sticks of time will get 30 points. Those who pass within 5 incense sticks of time will get 10 points. Those who pass within 5 incense sticks of time will get 10 points. Those who pass within 5 incense sticks of time won't get any points because those people usually won't come back, Boundless Sea said loudly. The incense stick he was talking about wasn't the short incense stick that normal people were familiar with, but the long incense stick that the conference had specially ordered. Just like the first round of robbing, it took much longer than the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. Otherwise, this new sea route was 40 kilometers long. not to mention the dangers along the way. Even if one was familiar with the route, this little bit of time would not be enough. Hearing this, everyone understood the rules of the second round of the dangerous region navigation. Next, it all depended on how the 32 escort agencies arranged their troops. Unlike the first round, although it was also limited to Golden Corps experts, the second round did not have high requirements for the strength of the escorts. Even if it was the early stage of the Gold Corps realm, it was not impossible, but there was one thing: one must have extremely rich experience in sailing. Otherwise, no matter how high the strength of the Gold Corps realm was, it would be useless. If there really was a reef whirlpool or something like that. Once the ship was destroyed, not to mention Aura's core stage experts, even nascent soul stage experts would not be able to survive. Falling into the vast ocean would only result in death. Although cultivators kept saying that they wanted to go against the heavens, in the face of the vast ocean, at least those below the nascent soul stage were far from having the confidence to go against it. No matter which escort agency, there would more or less be a few old escorts with rich experience in sailing. But at this time, basically no one would take the initiative to sign up. There was no other reason. This round looked simple, but in reality, it was more dangerous than the first round. The first round was an open fight. It looked bloody and cruel, but at least they could see their opponents. Even if they died, they would at least die knowing why. However, in this second round, the hidden reefs and whirlpools hidden under the sea fog were far more dangerous than a few Golden Corps enemies. The key was that they could not even see them, and in the end, they would not even know how they died, not to mention that there were pirates among them. It was completely unfamiliar and completely random. Under such circumstances, even the most experienced old escorts would not have the slightest confidence. Once they set out to sea, whether they could return alive depended on two things. One was sailing skills, and the other was luck. It could be said responsibly that the latter was far more important than the former. This was not called risking one's life, but gambling one's life. Under many circumstances, people could passionately risk their lives, but those who dared to gamble with their lives were few and far between. First of all, they had to be experienced old escorts, and at the same time, they had to be super gamblers who dared to gamble with their lives. These two characteristics did not exist in this world, because in the vast ocean, no gambler could live long. It's the same as before. Whoever is willing to participate, no matter the result, the agency will reward them with 50,000 spiritual jades. Does anyone want to sign up? Qi Wanhan continued to use the spiritual jades as an incentive. It was the same principle. When there was a high reward, there would be brave ones. However, this time, no one responded as enthusiastically as before. The group of escorts from the Equal of Heaven escort agency looked at each other, and each of them shrunk their necks, not daring to meet Qi Wanhan's gaze. They were afraid of being called out by this young master in front of everyone. In the first round of the competition, 3 brothers who usually worked together had been beaten to death in front of everyone's eyes. Even now, the arena was still stained with their fresh blood. This kind of shock and stimulation was not something that could be digested in a short amount of time. Moreover, among the crowd, there were indeed people who were not afraid to put their lives on the line. This kind of fight to the death, at least there was a chance of survival. However, to go to a completely unfamiliar and dangerous sea, anyone with a little bit of common sense would know that this was no different from seeking death. Sea fog, submerged reefs, whirlpools, and pirates. Any one of these alone would not be enough to cause people to shrink back. However, when all of them were put together, it was truly a matter of life and death. No matter how confident the crowd was in their own navigational skills, they did not dare to accept this job that was almost certain death. Unless one had heaven-defying luck, coupled with skilled navigational skills, there was only a sliver of a chance of survival. However, who would be willing to bet their lives on luck? Although 50,000 spiritual jades was good, everyone was afraid that even if they had the life to earn it, they would not have the life to spend it. Seeing that no one had volunteered for a long time, Qi Wanhan suddenly fell into a dilemma. If it really did not work, the only method left was to use his status as the young master of the escort agency to force the selection. After all, he could not just give up. However, this was the last resort. If he really did that, not to mention whether the selected people would really cooperate, it would definitely be a huge blow to their morale. Chapter 44:17. After this, it would be unrealistic to expect everyone to volunteer themselves, or even to fight to the death for the agency like they did in the first round. Forcing people to participate was the worst plan, but this competition had to have people participate. Qi Wenhan frowned. After a long while, he suddenly clenched his teeth. Fuck, why don't I go myself? It was no wonder that Qi Wenhan had this idea. After all, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was the property of the Qi family. Since no one else dared to participate in this kind of thing that would cost the agency their lives, only he, the young master, could do it himself. However, this was a huge hidden danger. If Qi Wenhan didn't come back, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency would lose a young master. More importantly, there would be no one to take charge of the situation for him. Once there was no leader, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's hard-won gains would go down the drain. Moreover, even if Qi Wenhan wanted to participate, his father, Qi Mingyuan, would never agree to it. After all, he only had one son. Qi Wenhan had a headache. Steward Song, who was beside him, also saw the problem and couldn't help but feel troubled. Based on Steward Song's relationship with the Qi father and son, he was willing to help Qi Wenhan solve his problems. For the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, he was willing to go through fire and water. But the problem was, he was an original infant stage expert, and the rules of the competition required him to be in the golden core stage. What should he do? Everyone in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency looked at each other. No one knew what to do. The situation was in a stalemate. Brother Qi, let me go, Linny suddenly said. Ah! Qi Wenhan was shocked and hurriedly stopped him. No, no. I appreciate Brother Ling's kindness, but you definitely can't go this time. I've already decided. I'll go myself. To the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Lin Yi was a national treasure. This was obviously a suicide mission. How could he let him go? Even if Qi Wenhan went himself, it was still better than letting Lin Yi die for nothing. In any case, Qi Wenhan was the young master of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency. It was his duty to step forward at a time like this. However, Lin Yi was their external help. It was already a great favor for him to attend the South Continent Escort Agency's event. How could they let him participate in such a dangerous competition? Furthermore, he was not a seasoned escort with a wealth of sailing experience. Brother Qi, the escort agency still relies on you to manage it. It's like a battle on the battlefield. How can you, the commander-in-chief, personally go into battle? If this was seen by others, I thought the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was lacking in manpower. Lin Yi pressed down on Qi Wenhan's shoulder and sternly said, I have some experience in sailing, and I have enough confidence in this kind of thing. You can rest assured and leave it to me. No, I really can't. This was not a joking matter. No matter how experienced one was in sailing, they would not be able to compete in this kind of competition. It would be very difficult for them to come back alive, let alone you, Brother Ling. I will definitely not let you go. Furthermore, my father will not agree to it. Qi Wenhan still shook his head resolutely. Brother Qi, let me ask you a question. Have I ever lied to you? Lin Yi suddenly asked. No. Qi Wenhan could not help but be stunned. Then have you ever seen me do something that I was not confident in? Lin Yi asked again. I don't think so. Qi Wenhan scratched his head. Although the other party had done shocking things time and time again, when he thought about it carefully, everything seemed to be within his control. There was not the slightest feeling of being forced. Then that's it. Since I said I was confident, then naturally I was confident. Do I look like the kind of person who would joke around with my life? Lin Yi laughed heartily and took the registration form from Qi Wenhan's hands. Without waiting for the other party to react, he wrote Ling Yi's name on the form with a few strokes. When Qi Wenhan and Steward Song saw this scene, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. For a moment, they did not know what to do. Although they instinctively felt that they should not let Lin Yi go, Lin Yi had already gone this far. How could they stop him? They could not possibly shed all pretense of cordiality and force him to go. Could they? As for the other escorts of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, their gazes towards Lin Yi became more and more respectful. Previously, they had only respected Lin Yi's status and strength. Now, however, they were even more respectful of Lin Yi's courage. Anyone who dared to gamble with their life was a dangerous person that could not be provoked. As for someone like Lin Yi, who had both strength and status, and who dared to gamble with his life, he was like a god of war. They could only bow their heads and worship him. They could not show the slightest bit of disrespect. He, go and hand in the registration form. Lin Yi smiled as he handed the registration form back to Qi Wanhan. The reason why he did this was to help the Equal of Heaven escort agency. Just as Lin Yi had said, this kind of thing was extremely dangerous to others, but to him, it was a small matter. Admittedly, Lin Yi did not have much experience sailing. Not to mention hidden threats like submerged reefs and whirlpools, he might not even be very adept at steering a ship in the fog. However, this was already enough. With his skills, this competition would be a piece of cake for him. Qi Wanhan and Steward Song could only smile bitterly at each other. They did not know whether to accept this registration form or not. However, seeing that Lin Yi had already made up his mind, they also knew that with his personality, they would not be able to change his mind. Thus, they did not say anything more and could only silently thank him in their hearts. On the Equal of Heaven escort agency's side, because of Lin Yi's bravery, helping Qi Wanhan out of his predicament, there was no longer a problem in choosing a representative. However, the other escort agencies were still in a difficult situation. There was no other way. No one was willing to do this kind of thing. No matter how much the reward was, it was useless. Qi Wanhan was already very generous to offer 50,000 spiritual jades, but if that was not enough, then what about the other escort agencies? Again, spiritual jades were something that one had to be alive to earn, and at the same time, one had to be alive to spend them. Doing this was completely suicidal, and no one was an idiot. In the face of the second round of the competition, the tried and true saying that a generous reward would definitely attract a brave warrior had lost its effect. No matter how much the reward was, it was useless. Furthermore, the other escort agencies were not like the Equal of Heaven escort agency, where Lin Yi had stepped out to help them out. The only option they had left was to use the worst method that Qi Wanhan had just considered, and forcibly choose a representative. Everyone knew that this method was very demoralizing. If they had a choice, no one would be willing to make this choice. If they could forfeit, many escort agencies would rather forfeit. In any case, they did not expect to gain many points by forcibly selecting a representative, so it was better to be rational and maintain morale. Chapter 44:18. Unfortunately, the Nanzhou Escort Agency Grand Gathering had never given the right to forfeit. In any round of the competition, if an escort agency forfeited, it would not only lose the points of this round, but it would also be completely removed from the Nanzhou Escort Agency Alliance. To any escort agency, such an outcome was no different from a disaster. Because once they lost the protection of the Southern Continent Escort Agency Alliance, they would definitely become the prey of the Southern Continent's pirates. At that time, they wouldn't even know how they died, let alone establishing a firm foothold in the escort agency business. Everyone was forced to choose the lesser of two evils. Since they could not forfeit, they could only grit their teeth and force their selection. However, this was clearly a competition that would send them to their deaths. The various escort agencies no longer sought to accumulate points. Instead, they tried their best to minimize their losses. Of course, the experts from the escort agencies that were highly regarded were not willing to send them to their deaths. Therefore, many of the escort agencies sent out this round were simply a bunch of old, weak, sick, and disabled people. Most of them did not have much strength, nor did they have any special abilities. Many of them were severely injured when they were escorting bodyguards when they were young. Even now, they still had serious sequelae. There were even some who were on the verge of death. Instead of waiting for death, they might as well take this opportunity to earn some spiritual jades for their families. Moreover, at this time, even if they did not want to participate, the escort agencies would force them out. They had no choice but to participate. If they caused trouble now, they would definitely die a worse death later. Thus, they had no choice but to accept their fate. Just like the first round, before the competition began, the various escort agencies had to submit the name list of the participants to the judging panel, which would then be announced to the audience. Because of their outstanding performance in the first round, Qi Mingyuan was originally in a good mood, but when he received the registration form from his son, Qi Wanhan, he was stunned. When he saw Ling Yi's name, he was instantly stunned. Without saying anything, he subconsciously wanted to slap him. He was about to explode. Are you fucking crazy? Qi Mingyuan was instantly enraged. He pointed at Qi Wanhan's nose and scolded him. If it weren't for the fact that there were other leaders of the 5 major escort agencies nearby, he would have hung Qi Wanhan up and given him a good beating. Father, calm down first. Don't get angry. Qi Wenhan knew that this would happen and could only bitterly smile as he explained. The others were all unwilling to go, and I had originally wanted to go myself, but Lingyi said that he had the confidence and insisted on taking on this task. He even grabbed the registration form and filled it himself. I couldn't stop him. We have to stop them even if we can't. This is a competition where we are obviously going to die, and they are kind enough to help us out. But we can't cheat them. Don't you understand this? Qi Mingyuan angrily glared at Qi Wenhan and said, You don't have to do it yourself. Look at how they do it. Can't you learn from them and find some old, weak, sick or disabled people to deal with them? But even if they are old, weak, sick, or disabled, this kind of thing is too demoralizing, and it will easily leave a shadow in everyone's hearts. In the long run, it will be very disadvantageous for the agency. I might as well do it myself. Qi Wenhan frowned. He had received elite education since he was young, and he knew that the support of the people was the key to the success or failure of any organization. Once they lost the support of the people, not to mention the fact that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was only one of the 5 major escort agencies, even a traditional aristocratic family like the Four Seas Escort Agency would fall into the abyss of a nightmare. This price was too high for anyone to bear. Who said that we have to force people to do it? Who do you think you are to do it yourself? You are the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. In the future you will be in charge. Can't you use your brain? Qi Mingyuan's face was full of exasperation as he viciously knocked on Qi Wenhan's head. Then father, what do you think we should do? Qi Mingyuan said helplessly as he held his head with one hand. Stupid. Didn't 8th brother Tang keep saying that he doesn't want to live because of his old injuries? Why don't you just let him do it? Qi Mingyuan glared at him and curled his lips. Qi Wenhan was stunned for a moment before he remembered 8th brother Tang. This person had worked for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency for many years, and could be considered a veteran escort. It was said that when he was young, he had made a name for himself in the South Continent Sea. He was also someone who refused to submit to others. However, those who were brave and ruthless usually did not have a good ending. This 8th brother Tang was no exception. After a defeat, all the bones in his body were broken, and even his internal organs were punctured by his own bones. He was on the verge of reporting to the King of Hell. In the end, although his life was saved and he managed to recover some of his strength, he was left with serious sequelae. After joining the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, he could barely hold on. However, as time passed, especially after being exposed to the sea wind and drenched in the rain, the sequelae became more and more frequent. Moreover, each time it happened, it was worse than death. There were many times that 8th brother Tang was tortured to the point where he wanted to commit suicide. He even tried to do so, but he was stopped by others. Now, he was treated like an idler by the escort agency. He could only rely on drinking to numb himself. Every day, he would drink until he was dead drunk and muddle-headed. This is a good opportunity for Tang Laoba to be freed from his shackles. He can also earn a large sum of money for his family's funeral expenses. Whether it's for him or for our escort agency, it's a good thing. Why not? Qi Mingyuan said earnestly. You're right, but father, this is the most negative way to go. It's just a job. There's no way you can get points like this, Qi Wenhan said with a frown. Points? You're actually hoping to get points in this round? Are you stupid? Qi Mingyuan looked at Qi Wenhan in disbelief. He pointed at Boundless Sea, who wasn't far away, and said in a low voice, Do you know why there's a second round? Didn't the 5 of you discuss it together? Qi Wenhan couldn't help but ask. That's just in name. In reality, this second round was purely proposed by the Four Seas Escort Agency. Then, with all sorts of threats and promises, they used their status as the boss of the underworld to force it through, Qi Mingyuan explained unhappily. Qi Wenhan was speechless. He really didn't know that there was such an inside story. Now you understand, right? The Cold Magic Sea region is the Four Seas Escort Agency's home ground. This so-called new sea route is unfamiliar to us, but do you think it's unfamiliar to them as well? In other words, this is a competition tailor-made for them. Of course, they are the only ones who have a chance of scoring points. The other 31 escort agencies are just there to accompany the Crown Prince. Scoring points and whatnot is pure wishful thinking, Qi Mingyuan said with a sigh. Chapter 44:19. This was obvious. The Four Seas escort agency had gone through so much trouble to force their way through this competition so that they could quickly pull away from the rest. Otherwise, if it was easy to get points, then the other escort agencies would follow suit. If they could not pull away from the rest, then all their efforts would have been in vain. The Four Seas escort agency would be crazy. I can't say for others, but since Brother Ling said he was confident, then he must be confident. He is not the kind of person who pretends to be a hero. Qi Wenhan shook his head. Aya, why are you so stubborn? Ling Yi is not only a great benefactor to our escort agency, he is also an important ally. Even if he says that he is confident, we can't let him take such a risk. Qi Mingyuan was about to lose his temper with his own son. He was extremely talented, was the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and had a close relationship with the direct disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea. With all these halos added together, Lin Yi was definitely a stock with unlimited potential. Qi Mingyuan was able to lead the Qitian escort agency to where it was today, so he could naturally see this point clearly. Whatever Brother Ling says, I'll believe it. Dad, if you are worried, you can convince him yourself. I don't have the ability to do that. Qi Wenhan simply gave up. Qi Mingyuan suddenly had a bellyful of profanities, but he was also concerned about so many big shots around him. He was worried that there were so many important people around him, so he swallowed it back down and nodded hard on Qi Wenhan's head. He paced back and forth anxiously, like an ant on a hot pan. Qi Wenhan shrugged, standing on the side like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. No matter how his dad tried to persuade him, he wouldn't budge. He knew that it wouldn't make a difference even if he did. Once a person like this set his mind on something, no one would be able to change it. If he tried to persuade him again, he would only be asking for trouble. After a long time, Qi Mingyuan was at his wit's end. He could only stare at Qi Wenhan. Qi Wenhan knew that he could not persuade Lin Yi, and he could not persuade Qi Wenhan either. What else could he do? As one of the 5 judges, if it wasn't for special circumstances, Qi Mingyuan couldn't step down from the stage and leave everyone's sight. Otherwise, it would be seen as an under-the-table operation. His relationship with Lin Yi was far less intimate than that of his son, Qi Wenhan. There were many things that Qi Wenhan could say, but he couldn't. Besides, it might not be useful even if he said it. Left with no choice, Qi Mingyuan could only brace himself and report Ling Yi's name. However, he could not help but remind Qi Wenhan to go back and remind Lin Yi not to force himself in this kind of competition. Once he realized that he couldn't do anything, he would immediately turn back. There were no points for turning back halfway. Although it was basically the same as forfeiting, it was not as serious as publicly forfeiting before the competition. It would not make the South Continent's escort agency alliance famous. Instead, they would only have to pay the price of 300,000 spiritual jades. 300,000 spirit jades was not a small number for any escort agency. If a normal escort dared to do this, they would definitely be beaten to death. But if they could trade 300,000 spirit jades for Lin Yi's safe return, no matter if it was Qi Mingyuan or Qi Wenhan, they wouldn't feel that it was a loss at all. On the contrary, they would feel that it was a great profit. Compared to the first round where they had to deal with robbing the escorts, the registration process for the second round of the perilous domain voyage was obviously much longer. Although only one person was needed, the list of participants from each escort agency was like a difficult labor. It took a long time for them to submit it. It was only after waiting for an extra hour, and under the urging of the staff of the conference, that the list of participants from all 32 agencies was finally submitted. Under the organization of the staff of the conference, everyone collectively shifted their position and arrived at the magic cold pier. At this moment, the pier had already been cleared. The originally busy ships were all stopped at the side. Only 32 sailboats were separated by a distance of 20 meters from each other and lined up in a straight line on the pier. To ensure fairness, these 32 sailboats were the most common models in the various seas of the South Continent. They were all new ships of the same standard. Under the watchful eyes of Qi Wenhan and the others from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, Lin Yi boarded sailboat number 5. The participants from the other 31 escort agencies also boarded their respective sailboats according to their respective agencies' ranking in the previous Grand Meet. After entering the cockpit, Lin Yi looked around. The setup was basically the same as the sailboat he had used for the previous escort mission. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about not knowing how to sail it. At most, he wouldn't be very familiar with it. In the cockpit, apart from the compass, the route map, and other necessary items, there was only one item that was added for this grand meet. It was a small jade token formation. The number marked on it was the same as the serial number of the sailboat, number 5. After spending more than a year on the Heaven Stage Island, from the North Island to the Middle Island, and then to the current South Continent, Lin Yi's horizons had been broadened. In particular, he had made friends with the Will of Heaven and Hong Zhong, who were both experienced and knowledgeable. Even if he hadn't seen many things, he could still guess a thing or two. This small jade token formation with numbers should be a mother formation. The one in front of him was a child formation, and the mother formation should be in Magic Cold City. Each number corresponded to each other. If something happened to the number 5 sailboat, especially if the sailboat was destroyed, the number 5 small jade token formation would also be destroyed. The mother formation would receive the news immediately, and the people guarding the Devil Lang City would naturally know what had happened. The high-spirited bugle horn sounded. The 32 sailboats at the Magic Cold Pier set sail at the same time and set off in the predetermined direction. Nothing must happen to him. Qi Wenhan looked at Lin Yi's sailboat number 5 and prayed silently. Although he did believe that Lin Yi wouldn't do something he wasn't confident about, he still couldn't help but tremble in fear. It was better to be safe than sorry. If something really happened to Lin Yi, he wouldn't be able to absolve himself from the blame even if he died 10,000 times. Qi Wenhan was extremely nervous, but the people in charge of the other escort agencies didn't look worried at all. They were completely indifferent because the people who were going to fight were all old, weak, sick, and disabled. Everyone knew that once they set off, they wouldn't be able to come back, so they didn't have any hope at all. The only exception was the Four Seas Escort Agency. They weren't worried at all. Instead, they seemed confident and determined to win. It was as if the points of the second round of the competition were like cooked ducks in their eyes, and they couldn't fly away even if they wanted to. Not to mention the expressions of the people waiting at the pier, after the 32 sailboats set off. Because they were all new boats of the same model, they were still advancing side by side in the initial stage of the regular sea route. Even if there was a slight gap, it was negligible. Chapter 44:20. However, when they really entered the strange new sea route, the gap suddenly became apparent. Under the sea fog, the visibility had unknowingly dropped to less than 20 meters. Between the 32 ships, they could still hear the sound of each other riding the wind and waves, but they could no longer see each other's silhouette, and some of them could not even be seen clearly. Visibility, for all navigators, was the most critical and important. Once the visibility was reduced, it meant that there was no way to observe the environment in advance to avoid risks. When the eyes lost their function, especially in such a completely strange new sea route, it could be imagined how fatal it would be. Whether they lived or died, everything depended on luck. Even the most experienced sailor would be shaken in the face of a situation like this. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't have any experience at all. His knowledge of sailing was limited to the basics, and he couldn't even control the ship as he pleased. His face was calm and confident. Bang! Not far away, there was a sudden loud noise, and then there was the sound of seawater pouring into the cabin, accompanied by a hoarse cry for help. However, this voice was soon drowned by the huge waves. There was no doubt that the ship not far away must have hit a submerged reef, which resulted in the destruction of the ship and the death of the crew. However, there was nothing they could do about it. In this kind of visibility, they couldn't even see the ship 20 meters away, let alone the submerged reef hidden under the sea. Before the sound on this side had completely subsided, there was another loud bang on the other side. The result was the same as here, another submerged reef. They had just set off, but in the blink of an eye, the ships on the left and right had been destroyed one after another. As for places farther away, there were probably many people who suffered the same fate, but they were all covered by the sound of the surrounding wind and waves, so Lin Yi could not hear it. In the face of all this, ordinary people would tremble with fear, as if they were walking on thin ice, and even couldn't help but have the idea of escaping, especially if they were in Lin Yi's position. Qi Wenhan had already said that as long as he could return safely, it would be fine even if he turned back halfway. Even if they had to turn back halfway, it would be fine. If it were anyone else, they would have already turned around without a care for anything else. But Lin Yi didn't plan to do that at all. Even if he couldn't see what was going on in front of him, and he didn't know if he'd end up like the other ships, crashing into the rocks and destroying the ship, he was still calm and collected. It could even be said that he was unusually calm. Lin Yi had absolute confidence in this. He couldn't judge the situation in front of him just by relying on his own perception. But don't forget that the jade pendant on him had a natural warning function. 100% accuracy. In this situation, it was the best time to maximize the warning function of the jade pendant. It didn't matter if he didn't know where the hidden reef was. I don't know if there is a whirlpool ahead, but it doesn't matter. I don't know where the fixed point pirates are, but it didn't matter. As long as the jade pendant sounded its warning, they would immediately change course and adjust to a route that didn't have any warning. Naturally, everything would be fine, and they would be able to easily avoid all undetectable risks. The warning function of the jade pendant was simply tailor-made for the current environment. With the help of such a powerful golden finger, Lin Yi was really relaxed and happy when he steered the ship. If one looked down from mid-air through the layers of sea fog, they would see an extremely strange scene at this time. On the vast sea, there were wreckages everywhere, and on the sea in front of them, sailboat number 5 was constantly moving in all kinds of strange routes. One moment it was zigzagging, the next moment it was snake-like. In short, it didn't move in a straight line, but twisted. However, it was precisely this strange and twisted route that allowed it to skillfully avoid all the hidden reefs, and even the giant whirlpools that appeared from time to time. The scene looked extremely dangerous and thrilling. Only Lin Yi, the ship's controller, felt very at ease. This round of the competition was exactly as everyone had predicted. They hadn't even reached the halfway point, and the 32 escort agencies were almost completely wiped out. Wherever Lin Yi passed, he could see the wreckage of ships from time to time, as well as the strange carnivorous fish in the sea. As for the escorts, not even their corpses could be found. Not even their bones were left. If it wasn't for the warning function of the jade pendant, even Lin Yi would probably follow in the footsteps of the others and be stuffed into the stomachs of these ferocious and bloodthirsty carnivorous fish. Of course, there was no such thing as if in this world. If it really wasn't for the jade pendant, Lin Yi wouldn't have taken the initiative to fight. 21 ships. Lin Yi silently calculated in his heart. This was the number of wreckages he had seen along the way, which meant that at least 21 escort agencies had been eliminated in this round of dangerous sailing. This was just what he could see. If he included the ones that he hadn't seen, the total number would probably be close to 30. Such a high elimination rate was really outrageous. Moreover, Lin Yi also noticed that among the wreckages, there was no lack of high-ranking serial numbers, such as number 2. This meant that even the Divine Wind Escort Agency, a traditional aristocrat, had been defeated like the other escort agencies. Such a dangerous competition. No one should be able to complete it under normal circumstances. I wonder who designed it. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little strange. This point struck him the most, not only because of the wreckages he had seen along the way, but also because of the route he had taken. In retrospect, it was strange no matter how he looked at it. The complexity and danger of this sea route was really far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Without the help of a golden finger like the jade pendant, not to mention the competition, even if they were to slowly explore it bit by bit, it would take at least a month's time before they could barely find a path. Otherwise, no matter how many people came, they would all die. In short, this was not a place that could be used for a competition. As Lin Yi was muttering in his heart, suddenly after a turn, there was a sound that was different from the usual wind and waves not far ahead. Listening carefully, it was clearly a ship sailing swiftly in front of him. Lin Yi couldn't help but be shocked. Who on earth was in front of him? There was actually an expert who could actually gallop on this kind of sea route? And from the sound of this speed, it wasn't slow at all. Because of the sea fog, Lin Yi couldn't see the serial number of the ship in front of him, and even his divine sense was blocked. However, he could at least judge that it was definitely a participating ship in this competition. Otherwise, who would have nothing better to do and come to such a dangerous place to sail? While Lin Yi was puzzled at the back, on the sailboat in front of him, a middle-aged man at the helm also noticed the existence of Lin Yi at the same time. Chapter 44:21. He couldn't help but be shocked by this as well, and the degree of shock was even greater than Lin Yi's. What's going on? Could it be a ready-made one? The middle-aged man was both surprised and suspicious. His name was Wang Baitiao, and he used to be one of the most famous pirates in the cold magic sea. However, he was later subdued by Boundless Sea and became an escort for the Four Seas Escort Agency. Putting everything else aside, in terms of familiarity with the dark cold sea region, there was absolutely no one in this world who could compare to him, Wang Baitiao. After all, he was born and raised here. Whether it was as a pirate or as an armed escort, he had always been on the sea. He was definitely a local tyrant. Especially this stretch of the sea route. For this competition, he had specially spent 2 months measuring it bit by bit before finally finding the safest route to and fro. Apart from himself, no one else in the world knew about it. As a result, Wang Baitiao was completely confident in this competition. All of the other escort agencies had been wiped out. Only the Four Seas Escort Agency's boat number 1 had successfully returned. This was Boundless Sea's request. Everything had been going smoothly. The boats that should have capsized had pretty much all capsized. But Wang Baitiao never would have thought that someone would suddenly appear at this time. Wang Baitiao didn't believe that this guy had relied on his own strength to catch up. No matter how good his sailing skills were, it was impossible for him to do this. The only explanation was that this guy had been picking up ready-made goods along the way. That was the only plausible explanation. How can I do this? If I let this guy follow us back unscathed, wouldn't Chief Escort High skin me alive? Wang Baitiao broke out in cold sweat from fright. Don't look at how Boundless Sea was an escort agency. When he did things, he was much more ruthless than any pirate. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been subdued so easily. Even if Wang Baitiao had 10 guts, he wouldn't dare go back and face Boundless Sea's wrath. Although he had made up his mind to get rid of the ship behind him, Wang Baitiao did not dare to act rashly before he understood the situation. In this place, one did not necessarily have to fight to the death to kill. This sea route was a natural death trap. As long as one made good use of it, let alone killing a single person, he would kill 10,000 people without hesitation. The 2 ships, one in front and one behind, maintained a distance that was neither too far nor too close. After a while, the first ship in front suddenly changed its course and moved in a large zigzag pattern. It wasn't that it did this on purpose, but that there were dense reefs in front of it, and if it didn't move like this, it would be impossible to pass. Meanwhile, Wang Baitiao was also using this opportunity to observe the movements of the ship behind him. It would be best if they couldn't keep up, or they would definitely die on this reef. If they caught up, it would prove that the ship behind them was indeed picking up a ready-made catch, and it had already locked onto them. Although he didn't know what kind of ultimate technique the other party had to be able to stare at him in the sea mist that blocked the divine sense of a cultivator, he didn't know what it was. But the other party did it. A moment later, a cold light flashed in Wang Baitiao's eyes. That ship actually followed them. This guy was indeed a ready-made follower. From start to finish, Wang Baitiao had never considered the possibility that they were sailing with their own strength, because in everyone's knowledge, such a possibility didn't exist. There were no exceptions. Little did they know that there were some things in the world that ordinary people couldn't imagine. This guy's technique isn't bad. Wang Baitiao curled his lips and coldly snorted. If they were in an ordinary sea region, there wouldn't be any difficulty to speak of. But under the interference of this thick sea mist, walking in such a large zigzag pattern and not being thrown off was a test of skill. If one wasn't experienced enough, they wouldn't be able to do this. From the looks of it, it would be very difficult for Wang Baitiao to rely on speed to throw off the ship behind him. Even if he knew the safe route, he didn't dare to increase his speed. There were too many dangers in this place, and the slightest accident could lead to the destruction of the ship and the death of everyone. No one dared to take such a risk. But then Wang Baitiao's lips curled into a sinister smile. Since you're determined to pick up a ready-made catch, then you'd better follow me closely. Just in time for this daddy to add some spice to your plan. One in front, one behind, the 2 ships broke through the waves. In the control cabin of the number 5 ship, Lin Yi was growing more and more bewildered. He had been able to travel safely all this way thanks to the warning of his jade pendant, but what was the situation with the ship in front of him? It couldn't be that the other party also had a jade pendant, could it? But according to Lin Yi's observation, he found that the route chosen by the ship in front of him, especially when it came to the various turns, was far smoother than his. He himself could only change direction after receiving the warning of the jade pendant. Many times, if he failed to adjust at the first time, he would have to adjust again, causing the route to be very twisted and stiff. But the ship in front of him was different. Every time, it accurately turned into a turn ahead of time, as if it knew the safe route. It was smooth and natural. It seems that this South Continent Escort Agency Grand Gathering, which claims to be absolutely fair, can't avoid shady tricks. Lin Yi smiled mockingly. He wouldn't believe it if someone told him that the ship in front of him hadn't prepared meticulously beforehand. Even if they had a golden finger, it wouldn't be possible for them to do it so naturally. But in this way, following behind the ship saved Lin Yi a lot of trouble. At least when he received the warning of the jade pendant, he wouldn't be as flustered as before. As long as he listened to the changes in the sound of the water ahead, he could prepare in advance, which made it much easier. From the beginning to the end, Lin Yi didn't think about overtaking the ship in front of him. First, it was not necessary. After all, this round of competition was not based on ranking. As long as he could successfully return to the sea within a certain time, he would be able to get the corresponding points. It wasn't completely a life-and-death competition between them. Second, this sea route was too dangerous. Even if Lin Yi had the warning of the jade pendant and was in an invincible position, he didn't dare to advance rashly, because doing so would be equivalent to courting death. To be honest, his sailing level was probably not even at the beginner level. It was limited to controlling the ship, and he wasn't even fully proficient in it. If he really competed with those real sailing experts, it was very likely that he would make mistakes in his haste. When that time came, even the warning of the jade pendant wouldn't be able to save him. Lin Yi also knew this, so he wouldn't do stupid things. The only thing he had to do now was to steadily reach the necessary point and return. All other distracting thoughts were fleeting. Suddenly, the frequent warning of the jade pendant sounded again. Lin Yi listened to the sound of the ship in front of him and found that it was turning sharply to the right. Chapter 44:22. Lin Yi immediately made the decision to turn right without hesitation. The person in front obviously knew the safe route, so it was definitely right to follow him. Top novel, however, immediately afterward, Lin Yi's eyelids suddenly twitched. After he made the right turn, the warning of the jade pendant not only did not weaken, but became shorter and more intense. Still not out of danger? Lin Yi was shocked. He subconsciously confirmed the position of the ship ahead, and found that it was indeed on the right. That's right. Lin Yi did not dare to neglect it. He immediately turned the bow again and changed to a wide turn to the left. After a while, the warning of the jade pendant finally stopped. Did the person in front finally make a mistake? Lin Yi was secretly surprised. Along the way, he could be sure that the person in front must know the safe route, otherwise he could not have reached this place. Theoretically, as long as he followed him, there should be no problem. However, compared with the warning of his jade pendant, Lin Yi certainly chose to believe the warning of the jade pendant without hesitation. After all, people always made mistakes, but the jade pendant never did. What Lin Yi didn't know was that shortly after he turned the bow again, after the ship ahead passed by, a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sea. The turbulence was enough to drag any sailing ship into it. It was inevitable that the ship would be destroyed and people would die. Only a sea giant like a treasure ship could pass through it smoothly. If Lin Yi did not turn the bow in time but foolishly followed the ship ahead, the result could be imagined. Once the ship was destroyed, there would be no one to help him. Even with Lin Yi's strength, there was no chance for him to survive. Hee, let's see how you die this time. Wang Baitiao laughed wildly in ship number 1 as he listened to the turbulence of the whirlpool not far behind them. There was no need to look at this situation at all. Even if God followed them, they would definitely die. Unlike clearly existing reefs, the existence of the whirlpool was a great headache for any experienced navigator. The reason was that it was uncertain. No one knew where or when it would appear, but once it appeared, it would be a devastating disaster. Basically, any standard sailing ship that was dragged into the whirlpool would only have the same miserable ending. As a local tyrant, Wang Baitiao knew everything about the devilish cold sea region like the back of his hand, especially the distribution of the submerged reefs. However, even he could not predict when and where the whirlpools would appear. However, the whirlpools here were the only ones that could not be predicted. But the whirlpool here was an exception. It was not an ordinary whirlpool, but a legendary whirlpool. There was no such whirlpool in other places. Only in the South Continent Sea area, it was passed down from generation to generation. It sounded very magical at first, but it was actually because the South Continent Sea area was densely covered with submerged reefs. In addition, there were some special topographical features that formed naturally. It could also be considered a rare natural wonder. It was said that during normal times, the bait vortex was hidden under the surface of the sea and was as still as water. Ordinary people could neither see nor feel it. However, once a ship passed by it, it would cause the water to surge. As if it had cast a bait, the invisible vortex would immediately appear and swallow the ship behind it. This was the legendary bait vortex. The existence of the bait vortex was harmless to the first ship that passed by, but it was a devastating disaster for the ships following behind. In the past, many exploration fleets in the South Continent had survived all kinds of dangers, but they had died in the hands of the bait vortex. It couldn't be helped. Once the bait vortex was awakened, it would appear very quickly and suddenly. The ships following behind often relied heavily on the leading ship, so they couldn't react immediately. Even if they did, it would already be too late. This bait vortex was the death trap that Wang Baitiao had prepared for Lin Yi. If it was purely to avoid the reefs ahead, he could have turned left or right. Normally, to avoid triggering the bait vortex, Wang Baitiao would usually turn left. Only this time, in order to deal with Lin Yi, he chose to turn right. There's no problem now. 31 out of 32 escort agencies had their ships destroyed, and I'm the only one who returned safely. Chief Escort Hai won't blame me now, right? Wang Baitiao hummed a tune proudly. The strength of the 4 Seas escort agency was second to none amongst the 32 escort agencies. Coupled with the pull of the second round of the Perilous Regions voyage, the other 4 escort agencies were absolutely unable to catch up to them. Taking the first place was as easy as taking something out of one's pocket, a piece of cake. However, before Wang Baitiao could even sing half of his tune, a sailboat suddenly appeared on the left not far away. They were so close that they almost collided. The huge 5 on the sail was clearly reflected in Wang Baitiao's eyes. Fuck! That's the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's boat. Wang Baitiao's soul almost jumped out of his body. He stumbled and fell onto the deck, his face full of shock as if he had seen a ghost. This isn't a fucking ghost ship, is it? Of course he could guess that this Heavens Equal Escort Agency's boat number 5 was definitely the one that had been following behind him. But hadn't that guy been swallowed by the bait vortex? How did he come out from the side and somehow get in front of him? Shaking his head, Wang Baitiao fiercely slapped himself twice in the face. Only then did he manage to wake up from his shock. He stood up and steered the boat again, gritting his teeth as he looked at the boat number 5 in front of him. Fuck, what kind of trick is this guy up to? He actually managed to get here from the left. Even if he's lucky, this isn't how he got here, right? Does he know the safe route too? After thinking about it carefully, Wang Baitiao quickly overturned this conjecture. This was because this competition had been suggested by the 4 Seas Escort Agency at the last minute. The other escort agencies couldn't have made any preparations. Moreover, Wang Baitiao was the only one who had been scouting this route. The safe route was only in his head. If even Boundless Sea didn't know, then how could anyone else? No matter how he thought about it, Wang Baitiao finally came to a damned conclusion. This guy from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency had really run into some heaven-defying dog-shit luck. He hadn't been able to keep up with the bait whirlpool earlier, and had somehow managed to escape by accident. Now he had circled over from the left. I don't care what kind of luck you have. Since you dared to get in front of me, then don't even think about it anymore. I'll just ram you to death. Wang Baitiao immediately became vicious. Don't forget that he was a pirate. When he saw other ships at sea, his first reaction wasn't to greet them in a friendly manner, but to think of a way to sink them. Chapter 44-23. Bang! Sailboat number 1 suddenly adjusted its direction and accelerated, charging straight towards the side of sailboat number 5. It looked as if it would kill itself if it couldn't kill it. He might not be good in other aspects, but when it came to crashing into ships, Wang Baitiao's skill was definitely at the peak. He used to be in this line of work. Not to mention when he was a pirate, even when he joined the 4 Seas Escort Agency as an escort, he had crashed into and sunk many ships, but the targets were pirates. Lin Yi hadn't stabilized his footing, and almost suffered a huge loss. Fortunately, the jade pendant warned him in time, and he barely managed to adjust the position of the sailboat at the last moment. Otherwise, with the opponent's ferocious momentum, if he was really hit on the side, not to mention the whole boat would be chopped in half, at least capsizing would be a sure thing. Even so, Lin Yi's sailboat number 5 was forcefully knocked off the safe route, and almost crashed into a submerged reef not far away. One could imagine the outcome. With Lin Yi's rusty sailing skills, it was already quite rare for him to be able to stabilize the direction under such circumstances. However, Wang Baitiao didn't intend to let him off so easily. If the first time didn't work, he would try again. If the second time didn't work, he would try again. In any case, based on their positions, Wang Baitiao had the absolute initiative. Lin Yi, who was in front, didn't even have a chance to fight back, and could only let him ravage him. Bang! The boat shook again. Because it was prepared, it wasn't as unprepared as before, but it still didn't feel much better. Reckless fool! Lin Yi's eyes flashed with murderous intent. If it was someone else in his position, the only way to deal with the situation would probably be to speed up and shake off the opponent. But on this completely unfamiliar and dangerous sea route, increasing speed at all costs was tantamount to seeking death. In fact, this was exactly what Wang Baitiao was planning at the moment. In his eyes, there were only two choices for sailboat number 5. Either he would crash into it and sink it, or he would speed up and shake him off. No matter which one it was, he would still die. However, what he did not know was that Lin Yi actually had a third option, which was to jump off the ship. Kill him, Wang Baitiao. For Lin Yi, killing a golden core stage expert was a simple matter. After killing him, if nothing happened to his number 5 sailboat, then he would jump back to the number 5 sailboat and continue the competition. If something happened, then he would simply drive the number 1 sailboat back. In any case, the competition was about the person, not the boat. As long as Lin Yi returned safely. When the time came, the Equal of Heaven escort agency would still get the points. On the other side, Wang Baitiao was still feeling smug, thinking that he had completely forced Lin Yi into a dead end. Little did he know that he himself was the one standing at the gates of hell. He would have to report to the King of Hell. Brimming with confidence, Wang Baitiao immediately charged forward for the third time. Just as he was about to hit the target, he discovered that the sail of the number 5 sailboat suddenly turned. It had actually changed direction, heading directly to the right. Trying to run? Wang Baitiao's eyelids twitched, and he instinctively wanted to chase. However, he was suddenly shocked. According to the safe route he had previously explored, he had to turn left now. If he went to the right, although it was not completely impossible, when he had explored before, even a small boat would have a hard time passing through, let alone a large sailboat like this. There was no chance of passing through safely. On the other hand, the left path was much smoother. Since I'm going to die anyway, then I'll let you off this time and let you fend for yourself. Wang Baitiao cursed with some regret, and then turned the boat to the left. After all, he could not very well sink Lin Yi and bury himself with him. As he fantasized about Lin Yi's miserable death, he hummed a little tune proudly. Wang Baitiao was in a good mood again, but not long after, when he saw the silhouette of a small boat in front of him gradually becoming clearer in the sea fog, Wang Baitiao's happiness immediately disappeared, and his expression turned extremely ugly. The tonnage of this boat was extremely small, not even 1/10 of Wang Baitiao's sailboat, and it could only seat 5 people. If they were to clash head-on, Wang Baitiao could completely crush them. However, even if Wang Baitiao had 100 guts, he would never dare to do so. This was because he could not be more familiar with the black flag of a skeleton hanging on the boat. These were fucking pirates. According to the rules of the competition, there would be a random location on the sea route, and fixed-point pirates would be directly airdropped by flying spirit beasts. Because the coordinates were randomly messed up by the 5 judges, even the 4 Seas escort agency could not predict it in advance. To Wang Baitiao, this was also the only unknown factor. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that after such thorough preparation, he would still run into fixed-point pirates in the end. Man proposes, God disposes. Could this be God's will? Before Wang Baitiao could react further, the fixed-point pirates had already charged over aggressively. Wang Baitiao's vision immediately turned black, and he spat out a mouthful of blood in anger. This was because he suddenly remembered that sailboat number 5 had turned to the right very suddenly. Even if they wanted to escape on such an extremely dangerous sea route, they would not turn around rashly. From the looks of it now, it did not seem to be as simple as a cornered dog jumping over a wall, but there was a deeper meaning behind it. Although he was an Aurus Core expert, Wang Baitiao had never believed that there was anyone in this world who could foresee the future. He felt that this was all just a rumor. But today, he finally believed it, but it was too late. At the Demon Cold Pier, everyone was looking forward to it. Although the people in charge of the various escort agencies did not have much hope, they still held on to a sliver of hope. Even if the people they sent out were all old, weak, sick, or disabled, what if they got some heaven-defying luck? The others were fine, as they were not too nervous. But Qi Wenhan's side was really burning with anxiety. On one hand, he had to keep an eye on whether there were any ships coming back. On the other hand, he had to check how many incense sticks had been burned from time to time. At the same time, he had to keep an eye on the mother formation of the jade tokens to see if the fifth jade token was safe and sound. A pair of eyes was not enough at all. Not long after the crowd set off, the sliver of hope in the hearts of the various escort agencies was completely shattered. The situation at the mother formation of the jade tokens was constantly changing. There were a total of 32 jade tokens, and they shattered almost one after another. In less than the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, 30 of the 32 jade tokens had shattered. In the short time it took for half an incense stick to burn, they were almost completely wiped out. Such a high death rate really made one's scalp go numb. The escorts of the various escort agencies at the pier could not help but secretly rejoice that they had held back just now. Chapter 44-24. Otherwise, he would have been buried in the stomach of the fishes. Qi Wenhan trembled in fear as he listened to the sounds of the jade tokens shattering. He struggled for a long time before he dared to look. No matter how strong his mental fortitude was, he could not withstand such torment. Fortunately, the number 5 jade token was still intact. Out of the 32 jade tokens, only 2 were left. One was number 1, and the other was number 5. The person in charge of the 4 Seas escort agency was full of confidence from start to finish. He did not even look at the jade token's mother formation, as if the outcome was already set in stone. Qi Wenhan felt slightly more at ease now that he had made it this far. It seemed like he had made the right choice. Ling Yi never did anything he was not confident of. Since he dared to go, it meant that he was very confident. The situation of the jade token's mother formation was proof of that. But even so, Qi Wenhan did not dare to completely relax before he saw Lin Yi return safely. He was still praying nervously in his heart, hoping that there would be no accidents. The time it took to burn a stick of incense was not long, but it was not short either. According to the rules of the competition, if one could return within the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the highest score would be 200 points. But this was only limited to theory. There were so many agencies in the first round, and so many lives had been lost. In the end, only the 4 Seas escort agency had scored more than 100 points. How could points be obtained so easily? Therefore, the high score of 200 points only looked beautiful. In fact, it was just a decoration in the air. Normally, no one would be able to achieve it. Although no one had personally participated in the competition, it was easy to imagine that it would be taken out in such a gathering of experts. This part of the sea route was definitely not simple. The death rate of almost everyone was the best proof. Moreover, it was a full 40 miles back and forth. How could it be easy to return within the time it took to burn a stick of incense? Anyone with a bit of common sense did not think that anyone could return within the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Especially now that only 2 of the 32 agencies were left, not to mention the time it took to burn a stick of incense, someone could return within the time it took to burn 3 sticks of incense. That was already very rare. A ship is coming. Seeing that the first stick of incense was about to burn out, someone suddenly shouted. There was a sudden uproar at the dock. Everyone stood on tiptoe and looked at each other. The experts suddenly opened their mouths wide in surprise and looked at each other. Could it be a foreign ship? Someone couldn't help but mutter suspiciously. Immediately, many people at the side agreed. Although the dock was temporarily blocked, it couldn't completely prohibit foreign ships from entering the port, so it wouldn't be surprising if it was a foreign ship. But immediately after, as the sailboat got closer and closer, its silhouette obscured by the sea fog became clearer and clearer. Everyone gave up on this speculation because of the sailboat. It was clearly a standard sailboat used in competitions. Wang Baitiao has improved. Boundless Sea and the other 4 judges were sitting together. Seeing this, he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. In the previous special practice, Wang Baitiao's best result was 2 incense sticks worth of time. According to the rules of the competition, he would be able to get 100 points, no more, no less. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that this brat would actually be able to give such a pleasant surprise. This was like getting an extra 100 points for no reason at all. Congratulations, It looks like this year's champion is the Four Seas Escort Agency again. On the side, Zhao Bufan and the others all cupped their hands and congratulated Boundless Sea. In their hearts, they felt helpless. This allowed the Four Seas Escort Agency to get an extra 200 points. Their escort agencies really didn't have any chance at all. There was nothing they could do. This sort of situation had already been predicted before this competition. As one of the 5 great escort agency, the Four Seas Escort Agency's position as the hegemon couldn't be shaken. With its powerful foundation, it was enough to control the outcome of the competition. Against its carrot and stick offensive, it was impossible for anyone not to lower their heads. You flatter me. The competition has just begun. It's still too early to say such things. It's just that we have a bit of an advantage. Everyone still has a chance. Boundless Sea laughed and accepted everyone's congratulations. Intentionally or unintentionally, everyone seemed to have intentionally thrown one thing to the back of their minds. The contestants that were still alive weren't just the Four Seas Escort Agency's number 1, but also the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's number 5. Hearing Boundless Sea and the others compliment each other, Qi Mingyuan couldn't help but curse them for being hypocritical in his heart. However, he didn't dare to show it. After all, even he didn't believe that the one returning at this time would be his escort agency's Ling 1. Okay, this round wasn't easy. As the judges, I feel like we should go and welcome the winners. What does everyone think? Boundless Sea suddenly stood up. His meaning was very clear. He wanted to use this opportunity to properly praise the winners. In other words, he wanted his Four Seas Escort Agency to be in the limelight. Zhao Bufan and the others couldn't help but look at each other. In their hearts, they all had a stomach full of curses. However, they didn't want to make things difficult for Boundless Sea and the Four Seas Escort Agency over such a small matter. Since the other side had asked for it, then they would just pinch their noses and support him. The leaders of the 5 escort agencies immediately went to the very front of the dock and personally waited for the sailboat to dock. The crowd immediately went into an uproar. This kind of treatment was truly unprecedented. These 5 people represented the highest echelons of the southern continent's escort industry. Number 5. It's number 5. Someone suddenly shouted from the crowd. Soon after, more and more people saw the number on the sailboat. They were all incomparably shocked and began to discuss among themselves. Boundless Sea was originally full of pride, but when he saw the number clearly, his entire body instantly froze. His face instantly sank like the bottom of a pot, and he couldn't say anything for a long time. On the other hand, Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, as well as everyone from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, were instantly overjoyed. Their cheers shook the heavens. The boat reached the shore, and Lin Yi jumped off the boat. He glanced at the unfinished incense stick, and then looked in astonishment at Boundless Sea and the others in front of him, all of whom had brilliant expressions on their faces. He turned to Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan and smiled faintly. Not bad, I didn't fail you. In reality, if it wasn't for the fact that the last part of the sea was extremely difficult to traverse, he could have come back even faster. However, there wasn't much of a difference now. In any case, it was still 1 incense stick's worth of time, so the points were the same. Too awesome! Too awesome! Qi Wenhan and the others were so excited that they immediately lifted Lin Yi up. Each and every one of them shouted and jumped, unable to contain their excitement. Looks like we have to congratulate Head Escort Qi. It really is unexpected and out of the ordinary. After being stunned for a moment, Zhao Bufan and the others turned to Qi Mingyuan and cupped their hands in salute. At the same time, they glanced meaningfully at Boundless Sea to see how he would react. Chapter 44-25. Qi Mingyuan immediately cupped his hands in greeting. He couldn't hide the joy on his face. He was so excited that he didn't even know what to say. No wonder he was so excited. Returning within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense was a full 200 points. Even if they won both matches in the first round, they would only get 160 points. Not to mention, no escort agency had ever won a perfect match. Even the strongest escort agency, the Four Seas Escort Agency, only had 120 points. But this way, the situation was instantly reversed by the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Adding on the 100 points they had won in the first round, they had a full 300 points, leaving all the other escort agencies far behind. They had become an unprecedented dark horse. Impossible! Just as everyone was celebrating, Boundless Sea suddenly spoke up. He pointed at Lin Yi and said, "You ran back halfway, didn't you?" As soon as he said this, the entire stadium fell silent. Everyone's gazes focused on Lin Yi. Apart from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's people, everyone else's faces were filled with doubt. Boundless Sea was 100% confident that he could return within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Even a local snake like Wang Baitiao, who was familiar with the safe route, couldn't do it, let alone a complete stranger from the outside. Lin Yi heard this and smiled. He slowly took out the stamp from his chest pocket and held it up for everyone to see clearly. With this, no one questioned him anymore. They couldn't say that the stamp he had obtained from the required route was also fake, right? Boundless Sea's face turned green and purple. As the head escort of the Four Seas Escort Agency, he was definitely the center of attention in this sort of situation. But in just a short moment, he had been slapped in the face twice. The feeling of being slapped in the face twice in a row was really indescribable. If there was a crack in the ground, he would have already crawled into it and disappeared. Boundless Sea's only chance to save his face was to place his hopes on Wang Baitiao. If Wang Baitiao could also return within the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, his face as the head escort of the Four Seas Escort Agency wouldn't look too bad. However, when the second incense stick finished burning, not to mention the burning of the first incense stick, even now, the third incense stick was about to burn down, but the number 1 sailboat representing the Four Seas Escort Agency still hadn't returned. If it wasn't for the fact that the number 1 jade tablet hadn't shattered yet, Boundless Sea would have suspected that Wang Baitiao had already died. Why isn't this bastard dead yet? Boundless Sea's face was ashen with anger. As the home ground of a powerhouse escort agency, his original spirit of ruling the world had disappeared without a trace. Don't even talk about being in the limelight. He didn't even dare to raise his head in front of the other leaders of the escort agencies, for fear of being laughed at. Finally, when the third incense stick was about to burn out, sailboat number 1 finally arrived, but before everyone could greet it, they discovered that the ship was in tatters and riddled with holes, right in front of everyone's eyes. The hull of the ship was obviously getting shorter and shorter. Finally it completely sank. Everyone was dumbfounded. Fortunately, they were not far from the pier. Wang Baitiao didn't care about his sorry state and swam back, huffing and puffing. Before Wang Baitiao could swim ashore, the furious Boundless Sea kicked him in the face, sending him back into the sea with a bloody face. He had already used up all his stamina, and now he almost drowned. Wang Baitiao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Normally with his skill, he wouldn't have dared to ask for more than 1 incense stick, but he should have been able to make it back in 2. But this time, not only had he tangled with Lin Yi for a while, he had also encountered pirates. Being able to make it back alive was already a miracle. Fortunately, there were his own men from the Four Seas Escort Agency among the pirates, who secretly went easy on him. Only then did Wang Baitiao have a chance to escape. But even so, he still smashed a large hole in the ship in his panic. Wang Baitiao had been repairing the ship the entire time. This time, he had been able to come back alive because he had used all of his strength to save his life. But in the end, he had to face the wrath of Boundless Sea. The second round of the competition ended. Of the 32 escort agencies, 30 of them had maintained their points from the first round. Only the top 2 had changed. After 2 rounds, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had a total of 300 points, taking first place. The Four Seas Escort Agency had a total of 170 points, taking second place. Looking at the point rankings, Boundless Sea was filled with regret. For the second round of the competition, he had used all sorts of methods to get everyone to nod their heads. He had originally thought that he would be able to take first place, but he hadn't thought that he would end up shooting himself in the foot. Instead, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had reaped the fruits of his labor and taken first place. The curtains fell on the first day of the Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Tournament. The various escort agencies dispersed one after another to rest and build up their strength for the second day of the tournament. Whether it was on the streets or in the inns, everyone in Demon Lang City was talking about the Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Tournament. Among them, the most eye-catching agency was none other than the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Even though they were one of the 5 great escort agency in the previous Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Tournament, they didn't have much of a foundation. Aside from in the Fleecy Sea territory, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency wasn't very well known in the entire Southern Continent. Many people didn't even know that they were one of the 5 great escort agency. However, this time, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's limelight instantly overshadowed all the other escort agencies, including the Four Seas Escort Agency. Their fame and attention skyrocketed, and they were viewed as this year's grand tournament's biggest dark horse, perhaps even the most popular. For any escort agency, fame often meant strength. The more famous they were, the more people recognized their strength, and the more business they would receive. Even the father and son, Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, had never imagined that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency would one day surpass all the other escort agencies and become the center of everyone's conversation. At the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's celebration banquet, Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan solemnly bowed to Lin Yi with Qi Wenhan. Young hero Ling, you have contributed greatly to today's tournament. On behalf of the entire escort agency, we thank you. Chief Escort Agency, you're too kind. Since I'm a member of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, it's only right and proper for me to contribute to the agency. Why do you have to do this? Lin Yi hurriedly stopped them. Not at all. You're our agency's great benefactor and hero. No matter how much we thank you, it's only right and proper. There's nothing we can do to repay you. Please accept the 100,000 spirit jades. Young hero Ling. It's just a small token of my appreciation, Qi Mingyuan said as he gestured for Qi Wenhan to take out a miniature card reader that had been prepared beforehand. Chapter 44-26. These people's eyes were wide open, and their faces were filled with unconcealable envy. This was the result of decades of painstaking effort by these people without sleep or rest. What do you mean? Lin Yi paused, frowning as he looked at Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan. I'm fighting on behalf of the escort agency because of our friendship. If this friendship has anything to do with Ling Yu, wouldn't it be meaningless? Qi Wenhan's eyes widened. His own Tiandan pavilion earned at least tens of thousands of spiritual jades every day in Middle Island. Lin Yi did not lack spiritual jades at all. The reason why he agreed to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency's Grand Festival was to take the opportunity to deal with Wu Bao Liang, and also to help the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. However, it would be too vulgar to accept spiritual jades. Young hero Ling is a righteous person, this is something we all know, but it is precisely because of this that you must accept this 100,000 spirit jades. Qi Mingyuan said forcefully. Why? Lin Yi could not help but feel puzzled. Brother Ling, could it be that you've forgotten? During the competition during the day, I made it clear to everyone that no matter if it was the first or second round, as long as one participated, regardless of the result, he or she would receive a reward of 5 to 100,000 spirit jades. Now, everyone else has already received their rewards, and only you, Brother Ling, are left. Brother Ling, you can treat spirit jades like dirt, but you can't expect me, the young master of an escort agency, to go back on my word, right? That's right. In the first round of the escort battle, young hero Ling's on-the-spot command was the greatest. As for the second round of the dangerous region voyage, there's no need to talk about it. Out of the 300 points that our escort agency has earned, 260 points are from young hero Ling. There's no doubt about this, right? Qi Mingyuan said to everyone. That's right, escort leader Ling deserves the greatest credit. Everyone in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency agreed. In that case, I really must accept this 100,000 spiritual jade? Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly when he saw this scene. They spoke in unison. He even suspected that these people had deliberately rehearsed this. I have to accept it. To be honest, with young hero Ling's great contributions, 100,000 spirit jades is too little. 300,000 spirit jades is more like it. It's just that the South Continent Escort Agency's grand gathering has just begun. After this, there are still many places where I need to use spirit jades. Since we're all on the same side, I'll be thick-skinned this time. I can only ask young hero Ling to forgive me, Qi Mingyuan said with a sincere expression. The South Continent's Escort Agency Grand Meet was actually a grand meet to burn spirit jades. Almost every competition relied on spirit jades to boost morale. Just the amount of spirit jades that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had given to their escorts on the first day of the competition was already staggering. It had already reached a massive amount of 500,000. Even if the other escort agencies weren't as generous, they wouldn't be too far behind, unless they were willing to lag behind. However, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was, after all, not a traditional aristocrat like the Four Seas escort agency. As the upstart of the previous competition among the 5 major escort agencies, their foundation was actually very limited. Even if they had prepared in advance, they would still inevitably be unable to make ends meet. Therefore, for the sake of the competition tomorrow and the day after, no matter how much the Chi father and son wanted to, they still didn't dare to give too much to Lin Yi now. Otherwise, they might not be able to give out the reward when the time came. That would really make them the laughingstock of the grand meet. Alright, if that's the case, then I'll respectfully accept. At this point, Lin Yi had no choice but to nod his head. However, it didn't matter if he accepted the 100,000 spirit jades. After all, before he left, he would refine some medicinal pills for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, and that would be enough to repay them. Great! Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan were instantly overjoyed. They immediately raised their cups to Lin Yi and the other escorts, saying, "Today's victory was all thanks to young hero Ling and everyone else's hard work. We, father and son, would like to thank everyone here. In the following competition, I hope that everyone will continue to work hard and bring new heights to our Heavens Equal Escort Agency. I've prepared a celebratory feast for everyone. When we return to Weiwan City, we won't leave until we're drunk. We won't leave until we're drunk." Everyone raised their cups in celebration, their cheers shaking the heavens. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency was in high spirits. In comparison, the other escort agencies were far less enthusiastic. This was especially true for the Four Seas Escort Agency, which was regarded as the most popular choice by all in the industry. At this moment, the atmosphere in the agency was extremely heavy and gloomy. In the escort agency's inner hall, Boundless Sea sat in the main seat with a gloomy expression. In front of him, kneeling Wang Baitiao, who had been beaten black and blue, with not a single part of his body unharmed. "Since you've already been punished, then I'll give you a chance to live. Tell me, what exactly happened?" After a long silence, Boundless Sea finally spoke, his expression as dark as water. Yes. Wang Baitiao didn't dare to be negligent. He hastily recounted the entire competition, trembling with fear, from start to finish. He didn't dare to hide anything. After all, if he couldn't persuade Boundless Sea, then his life would be forfeit. "You're saying that there's something strange about that Ling Yi guy from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency?" Boundless Sea's heart trembled after hearing Boundless Sea's words. "There's definitely something strange. Uncle Sea, you know that I'm the only one who knows how to navigate this part of the ocean. No one else knows. If that kid really was following me, let alone the fact that the fog is so thick that even the most skilled ship engineer would find it hard to follow me closely. Even if he was following me closely, how did he manage to avoid the bait whirlpool? It can't be that he just got lucky, right?" Wang Baitiao hastily said. "Continue," Boundless Sea said, deep in thought. "Yes, and after that, when he was being chased by me, he suddenly chose the most difficult path to take. Even I wasn't confident that I could make it through, but he managed to make it back in the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. I chose the easier path, but I suddenly encountered fixed-point pirates. Uncle Sea, don't you think this is too strange?" Wang Baitiao stared at Boundless Sea. "Interesting. One time was luck, but 2 times in a row can't be luck." Boundless Sea's eyes flashed. He rubbed his chin and said, "I heard people say that the reason why the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was able to get 60 points in the first round was because of this person's on-the-spot commands. It seems like this Ling Yi guy really isn't a simple character. This guy has ruined our plans one after another. In order to avoid trouble later, Uncle C, don't you think we should make the first move to gain the upper hand?" Wang Baitiao made a sinister throat-slitting gesture. The reason why he was covered in wounds and even had his life in danger was because of Lin Yi. He obviously hated Lin Yi to the bone. "Is there a hole in your brain?" Boundless Sea took the opportunity to kick him in the face.